All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Wednesday, March 11th. Welcome to the Government, Labor, and Election Law Committee. I am Chair Melissa Wells, joined by my Vice Chair, Delegate Ken Kerr. And great to see you. We really appreciate the public's patience. We are at the part of session where our floor sessions are going longer because we're doing the good work of the people and getting bills voted out. So we appreciate everyone being patient and allowing us to push back today's start time for bill hearings. As a reminder, bill sponsors are untimed and witnesses are timed at 2 minutes. So if you go a little over, I'll be okay with that, but I will interject if you are speaking for several, more than 10 seconds over, basically. So with that, we will begin our first bill of the day, HB 1163, which is a Howard County delegation bill, and Delegate Jen Terraza is presenting.
All right, I believe I have one panelist who's virtual. I may not, but he was going to do his best.
Yes, I believe we have virtually Gavin Falcon.
That's right. Okay, great. All right, good afternoon, Chair Wells, Vice Chair Kerr, and members of the Government, Labor, and Elections Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Jen Terraza, here to present my final bill for GLE. Thank you for this opportunity to present HB 1163, a local bill which would lower voting age to 16 just for Board of Education elections and only in Howard County. The committee should have received the letter in support and also the vote sheet. If not, I have a copy here with me. So when I was around 16 or 17, I remember thinking when I got older, I would never completely understand the daily realities of school, what was working, what wasn't, how it made us feel. And that's an important perspective. Of course, there are obviously other perspectives and what's happening in our education system, a bigger picture, including how that fits into the budget with our priorities, but we already have that perspective. So when a group of young people, including Gavin Falcon, who you'll hear from today, asked me to sponsor this bill to allow 16 and 17-year-olds to vote for school board in Howard County, I jumped at the opportunity. Letting 16 and 17-year-olds vote is not a novel idea. A number of countries, including Scotland, Israel, Argentina, Australia, Brazil, let 16 and 17-year-olds vote in some combination of races in their countries. And 8 cities have already lowered the voting age for certain local elections, including a number of those in Maryland. And the response to allowing these young people to vote has been extremely positive. Since these laws went into effect, research has shown that those under age 18 voted at 4 times the rate of those over 18, and they continue to do so over time. And there's evidence that it makes these voters more interested in politics, and they become lifelong voters. And some research has even indicated that it increased the voting in their households. Note, once this is passed, the language here would have to appear on the state ballot, and it would need to be approved by the majority of the voters in the state as well as in Howard County. I respectfully urge a favorable report on House Bill 1163, and I welcome your questions.
Thank you very much. You would like for Mr. Falcon to go first?
Oh.
Okay.
Whichever.
Mr. Falcon, you can go first, and then we'll take questions.
May I begin?
Yes, you may begin.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Wells, Vice Chairman Kerr, and distinguished members of the Government, Labor, and Elections Committee. My name is Gavin Falcone. I'm a junior at Long Ridge High School, and I currently serve as the president of the Howard County Association of Student Councils, representing over 55,000 Howard County Public School System students. With that being said, I'm here today to urge your support for HB 1163. At its core, this bill does one simple thing. It gives the voters of Howard County the choice. Rather than mandating a change, HB 1163 allows residents to decide through referendum whether 16 and 17-year-olds should be able to vote in Board of Education elections. Students are the largest stakeholders in our education system. Every day, decisions are made by Board of Education members that affect our classrooms, our opportunities, and our futures. Yet, the people most impacted by those decisions currently have very limited representation in choosing those leaders. Students do have a voice through a student member on the board, or SMOB for short, but that position represents one student voice on a board of 7 adults holding full voting authority comparative to the SMOB's partial. is an important role, but it cannot fully represent students and enact meaningful change out of one vote out of 8. That being said, allowing 16, 17-year-olds to vote would strengthen that system by helping ensure the board members remain responsive to students. Howard County already has the infrastructure in place to exemplify this process. Currently, when we turn 16 years old, that is when we take government in our high school education career, making a perfect segment. You learn about government, then you get to apply it in real fashion. Additionally, even this change, students would still make up a small portion of the electorate. Roughly 9,000 students would be eligible to vote, comparative to the over 200,000 adult voters that are currently present in Howard County. This proposal does not shift control of elections. It simply ensures students have a meaningful voice in the decisions that directly impact their education. Most importantly, this bill doesn't make the decision itself, though. It simply allows the Howard County voters to decide through referendum. For these reasons, I respectfully urge your support for HB 1163. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much, Mr. Falcon. Thank you, Delegate Terrazza, for presenting this delegation bill for Howard County. We'll begin questions with Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Sorry.
Falcon.
Falcon. I just wanted to ask, can you give some examples of some types of issues that students are very concerned about where your vote on the voting for Board of Education members would be important?
Yeah, of course. So there's a variety, I could say. I think every decision inherently is very student-focused. Redistricting can be a big one. I know that's often contentious, but the budget. In Howard County, we have over $1 billion budget, so everything in that matter can kind of be itemized as important to students. Decisions regarding policy, for example, if you guys aren't aware, some of you may be, we had a cell phone ban entirely. There's no exceptions. That may be an important policy students are important about, because what about exceptions? For example, in my case, I have divorced parents, so that was important to me that I don't have exceptions to now contact whose house I'm even going home to sometimes. So I know there's a whole bunch of issues, but inherently the Board of Education governs everything schooling. So whether that's certain rules teachers have to follow or students don't, everything inherently is a student issue to some extent. It just depends on what angle you kind of look at it.
Great answer. Thank you for your advocacy.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Okay. Seeing no further questions from the committee, this concludes our bill hearing on HB 1163. Thank you, Delegate Terrazza and Mr. Falcon. We'll move on next to HB 1416, Delegate Long, and I believe Delegate Long's staff is here to present the bill. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
If you could state your name for the record as well.
Absolutely. My name is Kiara Wilson, and I'm here to testify on House Bill 1416 on Delegate Long's behalf. I want to thank the Chair, Wells, Vice Chair Kerr, and members of the GLE Committee for the opportunity to present on his behalf. Maryland has already acknowledged the disparities that exist in access to public contracting opportunities, which is why the state created and continues to maintain the Minority Business Enterprise Program. Maryland Disparity Analysis' most recent study showed that a total of 10.3% of the businesses capable of doing the work are owned by African Americans, but received only 5.1% of the state construction contract dollars. Similarly, women-owned construction businesses made up 13.7% of the marketplace, but received only 7.5% of the state construction contract dollars. House Bill 1416 builds on the existing MBE policy framework. As Maryland continues investing heavily in the infrastructure of the future, including electric vehicle charging networks, we should ensure the economic opportunities created by those investments are accessible to all Marylanders. Without this legislation, a private entity receiving state funding to purchase or install EV charging equipment may not be required to comply with the Maryland's Minority Businesses Enterprise Participation Framework. House Bill 1416 closes that gap by extending the MBE participation requirements to EV charging infrastructure projects. Under this bill, when a state contract includes EV charging equipment, the state unit must establish an expected level of MBE participation consistent with the existing procurement goals. The bill also ensures that when the entity receives a significant amount of state funding, such as $100,000 or more through the grant or loan for the purchase of an installation of these EV charging equipment, that recipients must comply with the state's Minority Business Enterprise Program as a condition of receiving those funds. House Bill 1416 helps ensure that businesses helping build this infrastructure reflect the strength and diversity throughout the state of Maryland and the workforce and entrepreneurial community. For these reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report of House Bill 1416, and I will do my best to answer any questions that you all have.
Thank you very much for presenting the bill on the delegate's behalf. Seeing no questions, did a great job presenting the bill. This concludes our bill hearing for HB 1416. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Same to you. We'll move next to HB 1500. I don't know if Delegate Howard is here with us. Okay, I do not see anyone. Okay, we'll move on. I don't know if Delegate Bob Long is here. All right, I do not see Delegate Bob Long. Delegate Hutchinson.
I'll have somebody here in just a second, but we are.
Okay, we'll go along to Delegate McCaskill. I see her staff is here, or?
She's coming.
Is she?
Yes.
All right, Delegate, I don't want to call this up 1419 yet. Delegate Ruff is not with us either. Is Delegate Hutchinson? Okay, all right, perfect. All right. Good afternoon. All right. Are you all presenting on behalf of the delegate?
Yeah, Delegate Hutchinson should be here soon. Sorry, apologies for that.
All right, we'll just take a momentary pause because I can't call, unfortunately, these other ones just yet. Actually, no one's in the room with us, I don't think. So we'll take a quick break. Are you ready to present for delegate? Okay, all right, just making sure that signal was what it meant. All right, we'll just take a quick break. All right, Delegate Hutchinson. Good afternoon. Delegate Hutchinson here to present HB 1079.
I'm also joined here with my intern, Raven Moloch, who's worked extensively on this bill for questions. So it's nice to be in Glee for the first time. So good afternoon, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Delegate Tom Hutchinson, representing District 37B from the beautiful Eastern Shore, presenting House Bill 1079, Office of Regulatory Management and State Authorizations. So in the state of Maryland, we have far too many regulations and burdensome permit approval processes that slows growth and hinders our ability to provide services to the citizens of Maryland. I'm sure all of us can attest that we have numerous constituent issues that we receive because of antiquated bureaucratic regulations and permitting process. In my district alone, so just recently there was a situation with a constituent who waited multiple months to receive his ADT pre-approval certification. His aspirations to become a licensed clinical alcohol drug counselor were put on hold for months because of unnecessary steps and a very lengthy regulatory process. This is a pervasive issue I hear often where professional licenses are delayed only due to red tape. Also in my district, I had to sponsor a bill this year to help a private citizen who actually purchased 3 lighthouses out in the Chesapeake Bay. All he just wants to do is restore them on his own money. But MDE has stepped in the way and made it a very difficult process for him to be able to get a permit to build a dock, to be able to turn these into educational sites and water and weather monitoring stations. So because he'd gotten so frustrated, he actually purchased a lighthouse in Virginia where they had no permitting process because the lighthouse is actually on federal land when it's out in the middle of the Chesapeake Bay. But we continue to create more processes and permitting processes that stymie growth. So in this case here, Virginia won and Maryland lost. Then another one, I actually had to introduce a bill this year because a very well-respected behavioral health center who has been around for 20 years. They're in good standing with the Behavioral Health Administration. They've been growing so much and they simply have to move offices. Sometimes they have to move just 2 blocks away. But we create such burden to them to be able to do that. So they have to have 2 offices open for almost a 12-month period while they have to re-enter as if they're a brand new behavioral health center to provide needed services that we have on the Eastern Shore. So Maryland is a heavily regulated state. The Code of Maryland Regulations contains over 10 million words and an unyielding number of regulations. Regulations are obviously needed to keep the state running smoothly and keep things in line and safe, but these regulations must be transparent, fair, impose minimal financial burdens and disruptions to Marylanders. So that's why I'm bringing this bill forward to create an Office of Regulatory Management. This office will have 3 objectives. One is to reduce regulatory requirements by 25%, improve the efficiency of the regulatory process, increase the transparency of regulatory process via a cost-benefit analysis. So a similar office was established in Virginia in 2022, and it saved the state of Virginia $1.2 billion over a 2-year period. Some of the efforts has saved Virginia homeowners $729 million by reducing the cost of building a home by $24,000 each. Under this office, the Virginia Department of Processing and Occupation Regulation cut down permit approval processing time from 33 days to 5 days, saving Virginians time and obviously money. So a Maryland House Bill 1079 offers 3 key advantages. It addresses the current budget deficit through operational savings, attracts businesses by streamlining regulatory timelines, and most critically, it lowers cost. A common sentiment heard as to why people decide to move from the state is cost of living, and with many reporting that they cannot afford to buy a home here, they can't open a business, they can't do simple things such as getting a professional license renewed in a timely basis is the need for this bill. This office can support current efforts to reduce costs to our citizens and continue to make Maryland their home. This is a worthwhile investment to save the state, its citizens, its 2 most important assets, time and money. It's a common sense bill that will support all citizens of Maryland and save the state millions, if not billions of dollars. I respectfully ask the committee for your favorable report. Thank you.
Chairwoman Wells, Vice Chairman Kerr, and members of the Government, Labor, and Elections Committee. My name's Lee Schalk. I'm Senior Vice President of Policy at the American Legislative Exchange Council. At the invitation of Delegate Hutchinson, I appreciate the opportunity to share our nonpartisan research and analysis on HB 1079. ALEC is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization headquartered in Virginia, made up of state legislators from across the country. Our mission is to promote the principles of limited government, free markets, and federalism to strengthen both states and their citizens. Today, I wanted to highlight some of the key reforms within HB 1079 that increase government efficiency and transparency while reducing burdensome regulations on Maryland citizens and businesses. The best evidence, as we just heard, for what HB 1079 can accomplish has already played out in a neighboring state, Virginia. In 2022, Governor Glenn Youngkin signed EO 19 to create the Office of Regulatory Management, or ORM, to bring consistency to the regulatory procedure and create a review process for existing regulations. Though the new Virginia governor, her administration has removed the ORM website from the internet, I'll gladly run through several of the highlights. The ORM was created with 3 primary objectives: to reduce burdensome regulations in Virginia by 25%, to improve efficiency in the permitting approval process, and to increase transparency through cost-benefit analysis. Virginia's ORM exceeded each of these goals. By late last year, the office had saved Virginia an estimated $1.2 billion each year and reduced or streamlined regulations not by 25%, but by 35%. Regulatory review times in the governor's office were 88% faster than historical averages. Additionally, every regulation and guidance document was publicly available online. These reductions translated into real, tangible improvements for Virginians. Average professional license processing times decreased from 33 days to just 5 days.
Mr. Shaw, if you could please wrap up.
So, in conclusion, HB 1079 would empower Maryland to take a proven step towards a more efficient, transparent, and accountable government. Thank you.
Great. I just want to compliment Ms. Raven Moloch. She came to present on, I think, a delegation bill, but you complimented her earlier, and I wanted to say that she's done a great job presenting on previous bills. So
She's been a great asset to the to my staff and my office.
yes,
Yeah, happy to
it's
have her.
good to hear. Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Delegate, thanks for bringing the bill. I just want to give you an opportunity, in case you wanted to address the fiscal note, because it looks pretty high. Have you spoke to anybody in the fiscal note office to see where they're deriving that cost from?
Well, that's in terms of us setting up the Office of Regulatory Management and what they would have to do to be able to staff that. So that's obviously something that's got to be considered as part of this bill. But obviously, as you've seen what happened in the state of Virginia, when you're talking about billions of dollars of savings, I think it's something that warrants an investment in time and resources to establish this.
Right. That's why I wanted to give you the opportunity to address, because as you know, anything with a big physical note, even though if we have future savings come, it's kind of tough to sell. So I was hoping maybe you could work out something with them so you can show what the future savings is going to be. But it's tough to do. I know that.
Absolutely. Thank you, though. Thank you for the question.
Okay, seeing no further questions from the committee. Thank you very much, Delegate, for the bill and
Thank
to your
you.
panel. That concludes our bill hearing on HB 1079. We'll move next to Delegate Ruff, presenting HB 1271.
May I bring the roll
I was
panel?
going to say I have Davon Love and Robert Turner
Yep.
in your sponsor
They might
panel.
still be in the hallway. Come on. All right. My panel will be coming in incrementally, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and to this newly formed committee. I am Delegate Malcolm P. Ruff, District 41 in Baltimore City, proudly here to present a historic piece of legislation, HB 1271, which is the Reparations Board Fund and Excise Tax Establishment. This legislation takes a step towards addressing the enduring economic consequences of chattel slavery and the ensuing systemic discrimination by establishing a framework for reparative justice in the state of Maryland. It will establish three core components: the Maryland Reparations Board, the Maryland Reparations Fund, which will then establish a dedicated revenue source through an excise tax on certain institutional endowments. These components create a structured mechanism through which Maryland can begin the work of repairing historic inequities. The way the bill works is that it establishes the board, which is responsible for administering these funds. The board would evaluate the historical and economic impacts of slavery, segregation, and discriminatory public policies, develop eligible criteria and program structures, and recommend and administer reparative initiatives. It also creates the fund, which will serve as the financial vehicle for implementing reparative programs. The legislation also establishes an excise tax on certain large institutional endowments, directing those revenues into the reparations fund. This provides a sustainable and dedicated funding stream so that reparative initiatives are not dependent on annual appropriations. For generations, public policy in this nation and in the state produced profound economic disparities as a result of chattel slavery, Jim Crow laws, redlining, discriminatory lending, and unequal access to a plethora of opportunities. These were deliberate, policies that were promulgated in this state. This bill acknowledges that entities that not only generated wealth on the backs of black slave labor, but also helped to perpetuate these disparities have a responsibility to help repair them. Now, the opposition to this bill says they're not opposed to a study on reparations, but are opposed to this form of reparative policy that, according to them, targets their extremely large endowments. They are asking this committee to stifle this bill because it will cause them discomfort in rearranging their finances. They claim that this bill inexplicably targets entities engaged in philanthropic activity. In the case of Johns Hopkins, this position completely ignores their own history. In fact, when Johns Hopkins made his $7 million bequest to establish the university, that money was in part garnered due to his personal enslavement of black people. It is documented in census records from the 1840s and 1850s. Historian Martha S. Jones, who was commissioned by the president of Hopkins, discovered the school's ties to slavery after being asked to do so. And she described Mr. Hopkins' personal enrichment from slavery as such in Smithsonian Magazine. Hopkins, the descendant of Maryland planters, largely derived his wealth from real estate, railroads, banking, and by being party to slavery's crime against humanity. Wealthy men such as Hopkins amassed their fortunes back then through endeavors only 2 or 3 degrees removed from the exploitation of people treated as property. This was the case with many wealthy men before the Civil War because the main industries were railroads, banks, factories, and slavery. And Johns Hopkins engaged in all 4 of them. Notably, the $7 million seed that Hopkins endowed on the university in today dollars would be worth nearly $200 million based on inflation. Certainly, while Johns Hopkins is an essential contributor to our state's economy and philanthropic network, their ability to do so is directly connected to the exact harm that this bill seeks to repair. The excise tax provision makes perfectly logical sense. A portion, just a mere portion of the massive wealth that entities like Johns Hopkins have amassed needs to be redistributed to the descendants of those who toiled in the fields of our nation, who cooked the meals for wealthy white landowners, and endured the worst form of slavery to ever exist on the face of this planet, the vestiges of which still persist in our neighborhoods to this very day. So I'll forego the rest of what I was going to say, but this signals that Maryland is prepared to confront history head-on, honestly, and to pursue justice intentionally. And so I ask for a favorable report on HB 1271. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So I want to thank Delegate Ruff and this committee for hearing this bill. I asked Delegate Ruff to put this bill in because this is the kind of policies that would likely emerge from the Reparations Commission I know all of you know all about. And it's important for us to start to think about how we'd wrestle with some of those recommendations on a policy level. So just to provide some context, for those who may not be familiar, when we talk about reparations, we're talking about the fact that it is the 246 years of chattel slavery, the genocide of Native people, that created the economic inertia that established America as a global economic superpower, of which the luxuries that we in the West enjoy are based off of. And so really the purpose of reparations, as distinct from merely investing in social programs, is investing in Black people's collective capacity to build the kind of life-sustaining institutions such that we control and operate those important institutions: transportation, water, food, education, investing in our capacity to operationalize our vision of the world for our own community. And so one of the things that has been a part historically of reparations discourse, one of the things that is missing, as a person that sees myself as a legatee of the reparations movement, one of the limitations has been on questions as on a policy level as to how to pay for it and what is the mechanism by which it would be distributed. So really the purpose of this legislation is to provide this committee an example of answering those questions as to how do you pay for it. And as the delegate mentioned in his testimony, when we think about the basis for many institutions that have the level of wealth to establish endowments, it is hard to escape the fact that much of the capacity for these institutions to have such large endowments have to do with chattel slavery and other forms of racism and white supremacy that are clearly documented historical aspects of American civil society, that if we're serious about addressing that legacy, then these are the kind of things it's important to wrestle with. So my hope is that the committee engages this as an example of the kind of policy discussion that, again, will be coming inevitably from the Reparations Commission that, again, I know you all know all about. Thank you.
Again, thank you for this opportunity, and I also salute Delegate Ruff and the presentation, and I agree wholeheartedly with everything that Brother Love just mentioned. I wanted to speak as it relates to the morality of this issue. There's a book that I read, and one of the books in the book called Exodus, it details how before the Israelites left Egypt, that they were instructed by God to ask the Egyptians for gold and for silver. They were told by God to ask their Egyptian neighbors that they were working for gold and silver. And the Bible says that they got an abundance of that. This bill morally does that same thing, asking the society, the People's House, the General Assembly of Maryland for repair from those who have seen an overwhelming amount of abundance because of the suffering and the exploitation of Black people in this state. As Delegate Ruff mentioned, the actual creator, founder of Johns Hopkins was an enslaver himself. And so it is by far the morally right thing to do, and the time for it is past time. But you are that generation, that noble generation that will say yes and have this be something that your children and your grandchildren can look back on and say, my father, my mother, my auntie, my uncle was the deciding vote that voted yes in favor of funding and repairing the harm that has been so far neglected. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the bill, and to the witnesses as well for your testimony. Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill forward. I was reading through the testimony that was submitted, and one of the testifiers, or one of the written testimonies that caught my eye was the Maryland Chamber of Commerce, where in their testimony, they report that in 2025, the university's economic impact in Maryland exceeded $40 billion, and that this bill inherently will cause that economic impact to decrease. I was wondering if you could help illuminate if this fund would help in the economic impact of our state by investing in communities that have been historically disenfranchised and enslaved.
So just a couple of things to note about the bill. All right. A couple of things to know about the bill. It excludes public institutions of higher learning for the purposes of wanting to be careful about the fact that you think about higher education and their revenue. So it's considering that. I think it's also important to note that I think this is something that for a lot of institutions that would apply, which would, as I understand it, there are only 4 institutions in the state of Maryland that this would even apply to. And that's part of the point of presenting the bill forward. In a version of this piece of legislation that addresses your question, I think there would be a lot of negotiation based on different institutions, what they feel like their contribution is already to some of these challenges. So it'll vary, I think, institution to institution.
But do you see this fund as a possible economic driver for the state?
Right, and to get to that point, when we invest in the Black community, when we invest in marginalized people, we're lifting from essentially folks that are at the bottom, unfortunately. And a part of that circumstance has to do with the vestiges of slavery, right? So certainly this type of investment in repairing is leveling the playing field and will allow folks who have traditionally been disenfranchised from opportunities, as I talked about earlier, to have those opportunities. For the Black community to have control and to actually be able to circulate Black dollars within the Black community, whereas right now the Black community does not circulate its own money within its own economy, right? And is very much reliant on the majority economy for survival, for any kind of sustenance. That can only benefit the greater good of the state of Maryland for Black folks to have political and economic freedom.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. All right, seeing no further questions from the committee, thank you to the bill sponsor, your sponsor panel. We have some additional
Thank you,
testimony.
Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Jonathan Rockkind, Sable Stewart, and I believe virtually we have Dreisen Heath. Dreesen Heath, I think it's, yeah. Hi, how are you?
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, you can. We're gonna first do our in-person witness, and then we'll go to you, Ms. Heath.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you. All right, you may begin, sir.
Thanks, Chair Wells and members of the committee. My name's Jonathan Rockkind. I live in District 43A. I've lived in Baltimore City for 20 years. I'm a member of Jewish Voice for Peace, and I'm here to deliver testimony in support of House Bill 1271 on behalf of the Baltimore City and DC Metro chapters of Jewish Voice for Peace. So JVP is a national grassroots Jewish organization working towards Palestinian freedom. And I've learned a lot about Palestine and Israel from studying and supporting justice here in the US. And I've learned a lot about the US from studying and supporting justice in Palestine. And I've learned both Israel and the US are settler colonial societies that were originally established through systematic violence and have inherited structures of domination and supremacy that still shape us. So overcoming these legacies to create societies where all people can live with freedom, safety, and dignity requires repair and fundamental structural transformation. The multi-generational fortunes in Maryland's largest endowments would not exist but for wealth generated by the system of enslavement. And using a portion of the income this wealth generates for repair and restitution is a real step towards the transformation that we need. In both the United States and Israel, authoritarian and supremacist movements are trying to suppress and even criminalize education and research into the violence at the origins of our societies. We have to push back against this, not just rhetorically, but in material reparative action and real accountability. These are really dangerous times. Authoritarian movements are trying to reshape our societies around the world. If we're going to get through this, we in JVP believe we have to stand up for everyone and advance true multiracial democracies here in Maryland, in Palestine and Israel, and beyond. So establishing reparations for historical inequality through an excise tax on Maryland's largest endowments is a meaningful step to address historical and ongoing harm in U.S. society. And for that reason, we urge a favorable report on HB 1271. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move next to Ms. Heath.
Thank you. Chair and members, thank you. I thank Delegates Ruff and other co-sponsors and the Maryland advocates who kept this sacred work alive. My name is Dreesen Heath, principal of Heath Strategies, founder of the Why We Can't Wait Reparations Network, who has advised countless federal, state, county, and municipal reparations processes. The endowment excise tax in this bill is a routinely used instrument. The federal government already taxes private university endowments with rates reaching as high as 8%. Maryland's proposed 4% modestly sits within this existing federal framework. And we have used this mechanism beyond education to make institutions respond to harm. Tobacco settlements extracted nearly $200 billion from an industry tied to documented harm. BP Deepwater Horizon drew on corporate assets to compensate Gulf Coast communities. Opioid settlements directed billions towards community repair. So the principle is clear. When institutional wealth is tied to harm, we both have the authority and the obligation to directly remedy it. Maryland's own Department of Legislative Services confirmed it. Johns Hopkins holds $13.7 billion in endowment assets. At 4%, this bill generates over $500 million annually from just one institution that continues to deny Black residents access to its wealth, research, and medical care. This model also has a global track record. Germany required Deutsche Bank and others to fund reparations because they profited from racial harm. Canada's Indian residential school settlement tied church assets directly to a national compensation fund. And the New England Treaty of Waitangi created non-lapsing tribal funds with directed government governance and community-directed disbursement for the Maori peoples, precisely the structure this bill builds. This mechanism already works. The fund is non-lapsing because repair must be in perpetuity. I urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Heath. Excuse me. Seeing no questions from the committee, this concludes the bill hearing on HB 1271. Thank you both for your testimony. We'll move next to Delegate McCaskill, HB 1433. And then just so folks know, then we'll go to Delegate Howard after Delegate McCaskill.
Just as a point of privilege, this is my inaugural testimony here in the new Glee. So no pranks. Great. Perfect. Thank you. For the record, I am Alethea McCaskill, delegate for District 44B in Baltimore County. To you, Madam Chair, congratulations. To you, Mr. Chair, Mr. DJ Chair, and to the committee, thank you for allowing me to be here. I would like to offer a prelude to why this bill is needed. HB 1433 is needed to correct an unknown from 2023 when the Maryland General Assembly enacted the Maryland Public Employee Relations Board, or PERB, to handle higher education, collective bargaining in the public sector. Since 2023, the public PERB has been struggling to define the line between faculty, staff, and supervisors in Maryland community colleges, causing disputes in bargaining units. PERB has already identified the need for statutory definition and has emphasized that Maryland law currently provides no definition of supervisor, and that this gap has created inconsistent interruptions across institutions. HB 1433 provides the definition PERB indicated is missing. The bill protects the General Assembly's intent to include department heads and faculty bargaining units. Maryland law explicitly includes department heads within the definition of faculty. Yet PERB found that currently allowing colleges to exclude all department heads by labeling them supervisors will nullify this statutory language. HB 1433 codifies this reasoning and prevents misclassification. HB 1433 will offer a clear definition of which employees have collective bargaining rights. This bill is a technical request by PERB to ensure consistency, fairness, and stability in collective bargaining across all 16 colleges in Maryland. HB 1433 adds a new section to the education article to define supervisory employee as an individual who, 1, has authority to hire, transfer, suspend, lay off, recall, promote, discharge, assign, reward, or discipline employees. 2, responsibly directs employees for more than 50% of their working hours. And 3, addresses and resolves employee complaints. This bill also clarifies that department heads, comparable positions, and faculty below the level of assistant dean are not supervisory employees for collective bargaining purposes. This aligns with the structure and the intent of Maryland's Community College Labor Statute and resolves ongoing disputes about who belongs in faculty bargaining units. Without a definition, community colleges and faculty organizations have been forced into lengthy disputes and litigation over unit composition. So what HB 1433 does not do is it does not expand bargaining rights beyond what the General Assembly has already granted. 2, it does not interfere with managerial authority or academic decision-making. And then 3, it does not alter the exclusion of true supervisors through real hiring, firing, and disciplinary authority. This bill clarifies who is a supervisor under Maryland law. And in conclusion, HB 1433 is a straightforward, necessary clarification that, for all these reasons mentioned in this testimony, HB 1433 is necessary, and it balances the clarification that strengthens the integrity of collective bargaining in Maryland's community colleges. I also wish to note that our counsel is present just for any clarification questions as well for interpretation. So for this and all the reasons that I stated, I respectfully request for a favorable report on House Bill 1433.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Marina Sullivan, and I represent AFT Maryland and many of its affiliated local unions, including community college faculty unions. This bill seeks to correct a drafting error which led to an important definition being removed from this law. In 2021, the Maryland General Assembly passed the Community College Collective Bargaining Law, which defined and excluded supervisory employees from collective bargaining units. In 2023, as Delegate McCaskill explained, the General Assembly passed the Public Employee Relations Act, which modernized and consolidated a lot of the state's collective bargaining laws. The Public Employee Relations Act also created the Public Employee Relations Board, which administers public sector labor disputes in Maryland. It seems that as part of this 2023 rewrite of the collective bargaining law, the General Assembly inadvertently removed the definition of supervisory employee from the law. And unfortunately, this has led to unnecessary litigation every time community college faculty seek to form a union in Maryland. Specifically, the PERB has had to consider at least 4 times whether the heads or chairs of academic departments are supervisors or whether they should be included in the bargaining units with their fellow full-time faculty members. And the PERB has done its best to resolve this, but it has to do so every time with a different analysis and has informally expressed to the parties that this would be best resolved if the General Assembly clarified in statute. That's exactly what HB 1433 does here. The definition in this bill is designed to effectuate the PERB's ruling on this issue, and it also reflects the reality that chairs and heads of academic departments share common interests with their fellow faculty members. And for these reasons, we urge the committee move this straightforward fix forward and give HB 1433 a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the bill sponsor and to Ms. Sullivan for her testimony. I have also listed Lauren Lamb from MSEA. I don't know if they're here or not. Okay.
Chair Wells, Vice Chair Kerr, members of the committee, thank you for your time today. My name is Lauren Lamb with the Maryland State Education Association, which represents 76,000 educators across the state, including educators at community colleges. We strongly support House Bill 1433. Maryland's development of public sector collective bargaining for workers has been incremental, and while we appreciate the work of the General Assembly in the last several years, elements of the law are still insufficient to protect the interests of working families, and this bill is an excellent example of correcting one of those errors. By restoring the clear definition of supervisory employee, which was removed from the law in 2023, this will provide necessary guidance when issues related to unit designation come before the Public Employee Relations Board. Having this clarity up front eliminates the need to conduct hearings and render decisions on a case-by-case basis. This will reduce administrative strain and reduce the stress on the employees affected. Every worker deserves a seat at the table with their employer to discuss working conditions, and we urge the committee to issue a favorable report on House Bill 1433. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lamb. Seeing if we have any questions from the committee. All right, seeing none, that concludes our bill hearing on HB 1433. Thank you very much, Delegate, and to your panel. We will move next to Delegate Howard on HB 1500.
Good afternoon, committee. Good afternoon, Chair Wells, Vice Chair Kerr, and members of the Government, Labor, and Elections Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Seth Howard, and I'm pleased to present HB 1500 to the committee for your consideration. This bill requires units of state government to finalize adoption of regulations before collecting any fee or other payment under a program authorized or required under state law. The purpose of this bill is to ensure transparency, fairness, and accountability in the administration of state programs. In practice, if a state agency creates, authorizes, or administers a program that includes fees such as licensing, application, or other program-related charges, they first complete the regulatory process to establish how the program will operate and when it will operate. This legislation will ensure that state agencies do not impose unfair financial burdens on citizens until the program is fully accessible to them following the completion of regulations. I respectfully request a favorable report on HB 1500. I looked at the fiscal note. When you look at the fiscal effect, quite frankly, I find it vague at best. And as far as the emergency regulations are concerned, I would absolutely entertain any an amendment. I don't want to get in the way of you know, we live in uncertain times, right? So I don't want to get in the way of any type of emergency regulations that we would need to promulgate to facilitate, you know, coordinating anything for relief and things like that for Marylanders. But in the meantime, I just think it's good practice. We ask Maryland citizens and our businesses to abide by these type of practices, and I just feel like you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. We have state agencies that already do this, and then some don't, which is a mystery to me. It should be to everyone. And with that, I submit the bill, and I ask for a favorable request, and I thank the committee for its time.
Thank you very much, Delegate Howard. Seeing if we have any questions from the committee. All right, seeing none. Thank you so much for presenting your bill and for your patience as well.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our next bill hearing. I think Delegate Long was here and he's left the room. So we will now call Delegate Ebersol for HB 1492.
With your permission, Madam Chair, I have a couple people to the panel with me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Who do I have? I have Megan Royden, Diamond Tay Brown, Paul Limley, and Curtis Johnson. Is that correct?
I bet Diamond Tay loves it that you pronounced her name correctly, too.
You said what?
I bet Diamond Tay loves it that you pronounced her name correctly.
You know, I know the name.
Can't miss a trick.
And Chair Wells, Christina is not testifying, but she was just going to pull up just for questions.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
I think we'll have, there may not be a chair for her.
She's just right here.
Oh, okay, got it, if needed. Perfect, okay.
And we have somebody from MSEA also, Paul Lemon.
All right, we might have to play musical chairs.
It's okay with you if we drag one up?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Well, I don't want to, you know, I want to crowd your game here.
Thank you for asking for permission,
Sure,
Delegate.
absolutely. And thank you for hearing House Bill 1492. For the record, I'm Eric Ebersol, and testifying this bill. I've been meaning to do this bill for a while, okay? And I'm so pleased that Baltimore Teachers Union and MSEA and the Librarians Union came to me and asked me if I would give it a shot this year, and I think it has a good shot. I'm thinking about like if I was getting a roof put on my house, and I didn't really have enough funds when I started, and I realized as I got into it that I wasn't going to be able to pay the roofer. Better? Thank you. I might go out to him and say, I really can't pay you for the rest of this job. Now, he'd have a couple of options at that point. He could try to help me finance it or say, do you think you'll have it later? Can you wait? But he might just say, well, I'm done then. I'm out. I'll take what money I've got and I'll go, which would be unfortunate, but it's an option for him in that situation. Now, in the 90s, I was a teacher, and we signed a contract with the school system that I worked for. I'm not going to name them because there's no reason to bring them into it, but you can probably guess if you know anything about me. And we signed a 3-year contract. And in the middle of the second year, they said, you know, we really don't have the funds for this. Really sorry. We're not going to be able to do it. It was a contract. I was shocked. They're not going to meet a contract. We really didn't really have anything to do because state law says one of the things we cannot do in that situation is take a job action where we walk off the job, like the roofer. Now I'll admit to you, a roof is not as valuable a thing as children, so the analogy does drop down a little bit there. But we did do something. We said we're going to work to rule. We have a contract that says these are the things we have to do, these are the hours we have to work. We're not going to grade papers outside of the workday. We're not going to sponsor clubs that we're not paid for. We're not going to write college recommendations because we don't get paid for that. It took about 2 days with us suggesting we might do that for the county to come up with a really reasonable compromise that we could live with and that worked okay. We still didn't get everything, but that's always true in negotiations. And so now we come to Baltimore County. I'm naming them. Probably shouldn't have, but I did. They signed a contract with the teachers of Baltimore County, a 3-year contract. And at the beginning of this year, they said, sorry, we don't have funds. And what did those teachers have to do? Now, this was at the beginning of the year, and they were kind of stuck. And so they compromised in good faith. But what basically happened is they got the raises and increases that they got halfway through the year. Well, I don't want to make that sound like that's getting your raise. That's half of what they were due. They didn't have an option. They didn't have an option. Now, it could go to binding arbitration, but that often doesn't work out in the areas of money because binding arbitration has a little trouble offering money that a county says they don't have. And so what they did is they took half. They didn't have the option to say, you know, we might need to do a job action. We might need to step out. Because if they do that, the teachers can lose their certifications. Imagine that, being pitched out and saying, you did this, you no longer are qualified to teach. That upsets me because in so many places where people negotiate, they have this option. And so it's really important to me that we look at that, and I'm going to include also all the examples I've done are teacher examples because that's what I was, but librarians are in a similar situation. They also need to be considered. Now, I don't want teachers to go on strike. I don't want librarians to go on strike, and I don't think they actually will. Back to the job action in the 90s, it only took us a few days of suggesting the kind of inconvenience that would be imposed upon the system and the people who are in the system, students and parents, for them to say, okay, let's come up with something here, rather than just saying, oh, sorry, no. And it was important that that was something that we could do, but it really wasn't enough, wouldn't be enough in the situation I described second that occurred just recently in a county near me or that I might live in. So really, it's very important to me that we begin to extend this bargaining tool to our teachers and librarians in the state. And so I would like to ask you for a favorable report on this bill. And some people sitting with me are going to ask you for the same. Thank you.
Sorry, wait, please, folks, we don't, no public acknowledgement.
If I can do one thing at the end, if a lot of people came, we really held the testimony down so we wouldn't kill you all. Yes. If they could stand up so they could be recognized. Maybe they could do that right now. If you're here supporting this bill, would you please stand up?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate your indulgence.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Diamond Tay Brown, and I'm the president of the Baltimore Teachers Union. And I urge,
sorry. I'm too loud. You're not loud enough, you know.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Diamond Tay Brown. And I'm the president of the Baltimore Teachers Union, and I urge the committee to vote in favor of House Bill 1492. Although we are asking for public school employees and public librarians to have the right to strike, some people equate this demand to us wanting to go on strike. We do not want to go on strike, but we do want the right to strike because we believe that having the right to strike will balance the power between workers and employers at the bargaining table. School staff need more power at the bargaining table so that we can improve our students' learning conditions. which are our working conditions. With strike power, unions have won smaller class sizes, nurses and social workers in every school, more service for homeless students, naps for pre-kindergartners, school counselors, more librarians, a commitment to reduce testing by 50%, more green spaces in schools, and the end of random searches targeting students of color. We want these same things for our students, so please give us more power to fight for our students and the broader community by voting favorably on House Bill 1492.
Good afternoon, Chair Wells, Vice Chair Kerr, and members of the committee. My name is Megan Royden, and I'm the proud president of AFSCME Local 6359, Maryland Library Workers United. We represent the dedicated workers of public library systems throughout the state, including at Howard County Library System, where I work as an instructor and research specialist. I'm here today in support of HB 1492. This bill gives public school employees and public library workers the right to strike, a fundamental tool necessary to put workers on an even footing with management during bargaining. Striking is not a first option, but a last resort. No worker wants to go out on strike. It means they will be going without a paycheck. However, this tool is necessary to incentivize good faith negotiations between management and labor. Often, workers don't even need to go on strike. Just the act of authorizing the right to strike is enough to restart stalled negotiations and make meaningful progress at the bargaining table. Both management and labor are incentivized to avoid strikes. In labor relations, the goal is not conflict, it's resolution. Negotiations are at their best when both sides are encouraged to negotiate in good faith and when neither side holds all the power. It encourages earlier settlements, stronger agreements, and ultimately more stable workplaces. For the public school employees and library workers who serve our communities every day, this bill helps ensure their voices are heard and their working conditions can be fairly negotiated. And when workers have a strong voice in their working conditions, services improve. Strong worker rights create stronger public institutions. A fair union contract lets our members show up at work every day at their best and enables them to serve the community with excellence. Ultimately, fair contracts support strong public services for our communities. I respectfully urge the committee to support HB 1492. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair Wells and Vice Chair Kerr. My name is Curtis Johnson Jr., and I'm speaking as a member of the Baltimore Arrows Youth Table and Baltimore City Youth Councilman, as a Baltimore City Youth Councilman, representing District 12. In my role, I spend a lot of time listening to what young people in our community are experiencing in their schools. Students often talk about crowded classrooms, not having enough counselors, and school libraries that need more resources. These challenges affect how students learn and how supported they feel every day. Teachers and librarians see these same problems firsthand. However, in Maryland, they are not allowed to strike. Without that option, educators do not always have the power to push for the changes that students truly need. Repealing Maryland's no-strike law would give educators another tool to stand up for young people. When teachers and librarians advocate for better conditions, they are also advocating for smaller class sizes, more mental health support, stronger libraries, and better learning environments. This issue is not just about workers' rights. It is about making sure that students receive the support they deserve. When educators have a stronger voice, young people benefit both inside and outside the classroom. Thank you for the opportunity to share my perspective.
Good afternoon, chairs and members of the committee. My name is Paul Lemley. I'm MSCA president, representing 76,000 educators who do not get rich on the job, and we're in strong support of House Bill 1492. I'm going to enumerate many of the wins for parents and kids. As educators, we stand with and for our students, our families, and our communities. There are times when that advocacy must extend beyond the building walls. We call this bargaining for the common good. And in Los Angeles, Chicago, Oakland, and places where it is on the books illegal, like Massachusetts and West Virginia, we've demonstrated that progress was possible when educators, with the support of parents and the larger community, withheld their labor. Union demands for student and family supports led to positive and sustainable changes in these districts. We won increased funding. You heard President Brown talk about class size and green spaces and other things. I'll add to that list safer buildings, better policies, immigration and housing assistance, social workers, crisis response, and mental health specialists like psychologists. Because of this teamwork, educator strikes have enjoyed strong support from parents, and in many cases, parents have joined educators on the picket lines. Parent power people, take note, according to polling, 84% of parents would support a strike for more public school funding and greater teacher decision-making power in district policies, and 74% of parents stated that they would support a strike for higher educator pay. The UN's International Labor Organization considers the right of workers to strike as a fundamental human right. 12 states in this country have protected that right for educators. Strikes are not our goal. We urge the committee to issue a favorable report and invite your colleagues to go on record on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the bill sponsor and to the panelists. We have some questions from the committee. We'll begin with Delegate Fair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much to the panel for speaking, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill forward. A common challenge that we hear when we're talking about negotiations always seems to be around people's anxiety about salary. They think that all of this comes down to your salary. But what I found interesting in all of your testimony was you were talking about workplace conditions. And so, Ms. Brown, so we can zero in on a person to answer the question as efficiently as possible. When you say workplace conditions, can you help us understand, we're not just talking about your salary at the end of the day, we're talking about a lot more than that. Can you help us understand what those are, what that can look like?
Absolutely. For example, we are asking for things like our art teachers to have windows that open in their classrooms, because when students are doing their artwork, they're working with fumes and paints, and we think it's not healthy for them to be in a classroom with windows that don't open. We also ask for things like, we have to, unfortunately, negotiate and fight really hard for things like green folders. If you guys don't know, when a student has an individualized education plan, until it's digitized, it goes into these really big green folders, and there's special folders. You can only have, you need a 2-hole puncher to punch holes in them, and we have negotiated before had to have more green folders. We have had to negotiate for our audiologists in the Baltimore City School District. We have 7 audiologists. We asked for them to have running water, a running and working sink, so that when they're cleaning the students' ears, they have something, so that they can have, so the earwax has somewhere to go. We have not been able to accomplish that yet. So these are just a few examples of working conditions that are intertwined with our students' learning conditions that we fight for. And I have several more examples if you like.
No, I appreciate that.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Please.
No, one of the things that people misunderstand here is that teachers are just grabbing for more money. God knows they should, okay? But mostly they just want to do a good job. If you ask teachers what's important to them, they will tell you, I want money. I want good health care. They will also say, I want good working conditions, because most teachers get into the job because they want to do it well for their kids. I often say these unions are one of the rare unions that works for not only their constituents, the people who are members of their unions, but the people they serve as well. And that's very important to us.
Thank you, Delegate. And Curtis, first, thank you for coming out and testifying today, and not just advocating for yourself, but advocating for other people. And so it's not easy to be an advocate, as a young person day in and day out. So thank you for that time. I wanted to ask you to share your experience that you've had when you walk into a school system and you can see the frustration that a teacher has because they don't have the necessary resources to be able to serve you as a student in that school system. Have you experienced that before? I should start there. Have you ever experienced that?
I would say that when I go into different schools, because I've worked in different schools with children on another program, TDP, but I've seen that it can be very frustrating having to have kids that take materials that might be meant for during the day for other students and having to share those same resources for kids all over. Like when you have kids having after school programs and you have kids that come from the group I work in, which is CDP, it's very frustrating when your stuff is not put back in the same place. And also it costs because then you have to replace it if it's broken or if it's dirty. And not only that, but the room conditions can be pretty bad. Some schools I wouldn't name any schools in specific, but the conditions of those schools can be like you'll have snacks and things all around that of course kids would eat, but it would be infested with mice and rodents. That's not what the children eat in those conditions.
And in your opinion, as you watch those students throughout the school system struggle in those situations, do you think that maybe they're struggling to learn in those environments?
I think so. I think it's not only disgusting, but it's really hard to concentrate when you have rodents that you can see in the corner of your eye trying to take a test during the school day. And it's not fun.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Or thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Delegate Fair asked one of my questions, and so part of my questions were answered. But I think it's safe to say those of you, either educators or librarians, none of you got into this to get rich, and that's not what you're looking for.
We knew we weren't.
Thank you. So I just want to quickly ask, private employees have a right to strike, is that correct?
Yes.
And so if you were working for a corporation, you wouldn't need anybody to authorize you to strike. It's a right that's in, okay, thank you. And so because you don't have the right to strike, I think this was mentioned in some testimony, what happens if you can't come to agreement with the employer?
Well, for our process, when we can't come to an agreement with the employer, the next step is mediation. The employer and the union gets to choose a mediator by crossing off mediators that are available. And then when they settle on a mediator, then they have sessions with the mediator. And the mediator helps the two parties come to an agreement. If the two parties can't come to an agreement, then the mediator has the option, can write up a decision. And if the two parties can agree to if the two parties agree to the decision, then that is the settlement. But if one of the parties don't agree to the decision, then the next step would be going to the Public Employee Relations Board. At that point, whatever the Public Employee Relations Board decides is set in stone. There is no ratification from the membership. It is just whatever is decided at the PERB.
And so because one side is the employer and the employees' jobs and everything are dependent on that, there's sort of an imbalance of power without any kind of leverage. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely, it's true. The employer has much more authority, power, access, and resources than the unions have.
Thank you.
Delegate Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the teachers union president, the bill is for collective bargaining for all employees of the public school system statewide?
Yes.
So it's a statewide?
Yes.
Sorry?
There's two teachers union presidents up here.
Okay, sorry. I thought you were the head of the state teachers.
For clarity, BTU.
Baltimore's. Yeah, so
Go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you.
different national affiliates, but ask to whoever you want to ask.
No, so to the state teachers union president, it's statewide?
Yes, statewide bill.
And would the bill contemplate striking by teachers and others in the public school system during the school year when children are in school?
It's possible.
Okay. And is there a limitation on how long that strike could be?
Not in the bill. There's been 800 educator strikes in the U.S. in about the last 20 years. The average length of time is about a day. So there's not a prescribed time in the bill.
So in other words, there could be a strike during the school year, and in which case the students wouldn't be going to school because obviously there would be no one there to teach them, presumably.
Well, that's not necessarily true. When businesses have their people go on strike, administrators and bosses come in and keep things going. Mm-hmm. I'm sure the schools would be charged with making sure that the students were there. What would happen is they wouldn't get the high quality education of the people that they should be paying.
I'd also like to add that our strike law is very expansive. And so our strike law includes a work stoppage, a slowdown of work. Mm-hmm. And so right now, a lot of school staff members give a lot of additional free time. So if we were to we wouldn't have, first of all, as we've reiterated, we don't want to go on strike. We believe if we have this leverage, we would not have to. Unfortunately, most of the strikes that teachers go on are in those places where strikes are illegal. Mm-hmm. Right. But no, if we were to, our first step most likely would not be to be outside of school buildings. Mm-hmm. We would start with something like maybe a work slowdown where we're not giving so much free time to the after-school activities, the before-school activities, and things like that. Unfortunately, right now, if we were to even just work to our contract, what we actually get paid for, that would be considered a strike.
Okay. So I guess this is to the state teachers union president. You folks had lobbied the legislature very, and I'm trying to keep the answers short because there are other people who want to ask questions. So I'm trying to be mindful of their time as well. You folks, you lobbied very hard because I was here for the blueprint, which included all kinds of sweeping changes, including pay scales and so forth. And why is that not working? Because it hasn't even been fully implemented, and or it's been implemented in large part. What am I missing here?
Nothing, sir. I think the blueprint is working well. Community schools are achieving good results. The starting pay, we think, has reduced vacancies, and there's more work to do. As you've heard, we think the right to strike, or really the prohibition on penalties for educators who would do that, is a tool to achieve some of the aims that we were talking about here, like the wins for parents and kids.
Is there merit pay in the public school system?
No, there's an incentive for reaching your national board certification.
Okay. How about for students that are learning versus those that aren't?
No.
I mean, 84% of Baltimore City schools, students in the 8th grade in Baltimore City are illiterate. That is a fact. So my question is how do we fix that problem, and how do we square that with collective bargaining and the right to strike when so many students aren't learning? And you're smiling, but I mean,
that's because everybody's chomping at the bit to answer that question.
Right. For you. That's why
this whole table wants a piece of that.
And to be fair, we can talk about it offline too, because they're the people who ask questions. So.
I would say, in the large picture, if you make this an attractive state to teach in, and this is one part of it, then you will, and if you continue to do that, you may attract the best and the brightest. Last year, okay, there you go. I think that's part of it. You know, people would say, if I go there, I have greater rights as a teacher. Maybe I should go in Maryland and teach.
And that
And
that was my point about, and I'll just finish here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it, and I'll finish up right now. But that was my point to the folks sitting behind you about merit pay, connecting pay with results. Right, everybody else has it, but
in Baltimore City, I wanted to speak to Baltimore City because we do have a connection. Unfortunately, in city schools, our pay is directly connected to our evaluations. And our evaluations consist of formal observations of our classrooms, planning, and it's pretty much like 9 T roles. We are the only jurisdiction in the state of Maryland where our pay is directly tied to evaluations. And I believe that we could increase our students' literacy rates if we had better learning conditions for them.
Delegate Sample Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the bill, Delegate, and all those who are assembled today to share and enlighten us, actually. I did wanted to just ask you, because while you were speaking, Madam President, with regards to the art teachers and the sink to have running water, et cetera, do you quantify, like, and this may be for the state president, but do you quantify like how many of those same issues are showing up in other parts of the state as well? I'm just curious because, and if you could, two more examples, if you don't mind, because I'm learning while you're doing this. What are the 2 examples that you wanted to share as to what the challenges are within the school environment? And I would like to know that. But again, is that quantified so we get a bigger picture and say, well, 30 school jurisdictions don't have windows for art teachers. You know what I mean? So I was just trying to understand it on a higher level.
President Lemley could speak more to this, but I would say two issues that you could quantify across the state are excessive caseload and class sizes, and staffing shortages and retention.
Definitely, and we do try to identify those issues wherever they happen. Where there's air quality issues, it may not be the fumes from art projects, it might be mold. But yes, we definitely try to identify them everywhere and work to improve them everywhere.
So that's when you take that, I guess, document and show that we have X number of schools that are experiencing this particular issue. This number of schools don't have sinks for the audiologists. Is that how it's done, sir?
It can be. I guess what I was talking about when I said bargaining for the common good, I meant that we would identify those as actual proposals for our contract and say, hey, you know, every art teacher needs a ventilated space. But yeah, we would try to collect that data. Do we do it now statewide on all of those issues? Not necessarily, but there are some things that we do try to identify, like class sizes, per pupil funding, you know, staff ratios, like Diamond said about psychologists and mental health.
Yeah,
so
and those are almost a given. You know what I mean? So when you came down all the way down to those specific things, I think it woke me up a little bit more to say, wow, you know, this is real. So I think it might be beneficial to start collecting that information just for knowledge purposes. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Delegate Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill. So I was going to show you something real quick. This is a text from my wife last night, who's an occupational therapist in Prince George's County school system. I hear about IEPs all day. To go pick up a shelf for one of her schools. And I do know that this is a problem. And, you know, she's constantly taking stuff to school or wherever, you know, she travels around, or even to the students that she's trying to help. My question always is this is the baffling part, especially, you know, for me as a conservative Republican, when we look at these issues, it's like we're always on the teacher side, right? And when I look at the numbers, this is where it baffles me. I think, and I've talked to the union president, I've asked you this question before, that our teacher to student ratio is 15 to 1. Our average per student is now $19,000 and 400 and I think it's $19,400. That equals $290,000 per classroom. And I'm always lost on where's the money, if we're, because I know how much we're paying the teachers. It's not a lot of money. So where's the delta of all of this? And that's the question we keep asking. And before you answer, I think the most important question I want to ask is, I want to ask the student, because I think you're probably going to give me the most honest answer. In your, not that question. I'm going to give you a different question, because I think this is the heart of the matter. When we're talking about learning environments, do you have friends, or do you know experience, or people or kids that are trying to make it, making a good faith effort to make it to school, but they're getting the crap beat out of them, or they're getting roped into gangs, or they just don't have that support staff that can let them get to that school system? Because I don't think teachers in Baltimore City are any worse than they are in counties where they're doing better. I think the environment for students in their neighborhood sometimes, or even in their families, is so difficult that they're not able to even learn to make it to school. And you see that in Baltimore City and some other, even in Prince George's County, where my wife is. Do you see that experience? Do you see anybody that it's just so difficult for them to even learn because of, you know, either their neighborhoods or their family structure? And I'm gonna tell you why I'm asking the question in a second. Go ahead.
Well, I would say that what makes it really difficult to get an education is trying to get to school. Our public transportation system is really, really inefficient. And when trying to have thousands of students all trying to depend on one bus to get to school, and it comes every 30 to 40 minutes, that makes it all the more difficult to get there and get the education. And then not only that, but you have to go, as a high schooler, you have multiple periods to go to, and you have a busy schedule. Sometimes school is the only break that you get throughout the entire day, and they don't really have a time. Sometimes I've spoken to students where they literally their entire schedule is packed, where they don't have a time to go speak to a school counselor, or they don't even know that these resources exist, because most of the time their caseloads are overloaded, or those resources aren't really at the forefront for them to see or know about to go speak to those counselors. So,
right.
Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And the reason I asked the question is I am always been a huge proponent, I know it's favorable in here, of school choice, because I think there's a lot of students that are in this example that you just gave, where it's very difficult, whereas we have students that could thrive in a different environment. But because of the system we've designed here in the state of Maryland, it's not because of lack of money. The teachers aren't getting the money for some reason, but to me, I think that we need to have the money follow the student rather than the money follow the bricks, which evidently are deteriorating. And I know for sure that a lot of these environments in these school buildings are not good, and they're not conducive for learning. And I don't know if money is going to solve it, because the money seems to be going somewhere else. If somebody could answer or explain to me, why not giving children more choice so that they really can thrive, and then when they get out of high school, they get on the economic ladder up, rather than we have so many kids that are just can't even, they get through high school, but they really don't have a good education, and now they're stuck, and we've created generational poverty.
Delegate, there's a lot of things I agree with you with, but I want to make one correction. We wish that we had a ratio of 15-to-1.
I know you don't, teacher.
I'm not certain what teacher has that ratio, unless they have maybe a self-contained classroom. Most of the time, teachers are teaching classrooms anywhere between 30, 40, and 50 students. And then when you get to classes like physical education, art, music, we're literally warehousing students. You can have 60 to 100 students in a classroom with one teacher, because we talked about staffing shortages earlier. And I'll say, we believe that there are things that need to be prioritized. And what we're saying is, yes, money is important. We think people should be fairly compensated. We think we need to have the money for resources, but we also have to make things a priority. And the reason why we're here fighting to have this leverage is because our employers, the school districts, don't have the same priorities that you just mentioned, that our students are saying and that we're saying. We want to improve our students' learning conditions. But when things come down to just bodies, numbers, and dollars, then people get into what decisions they have to make. And they don't get the chance to think about the human being and what's happening on the way to school and all of these different barriers. And so we believe that our students deserve a lot more support. We believe that funds should be going to our students first for the resources that they need. But unfortunately, sometimes that's not the decision that our employers make. And if we had more power at the bargaining table, we would make sure they made those type of decisions.
Yeah, and I thank you for correcting a record. That's not, when you take the total number with the total number of teachers and students, that's where that 15-to-1 comes from, and I think anybody could look that up. And I agree with you. I know for sure that your classrooms are packed. My question always is, in Anne Arundel County, where's everybody else? Oftentimes I find that they're at Riva Road getting paid, but they're not in the classroom, and I don't know how to fix that. But I agree with you 100% that the money, you just said, it should be following the student so that they are really, every student's different, right? Every environment's different. So if the money followed the student, we would have a much more flexible public school system, because look, not a single person in this state benefits from a student that doesn't come out of high school ready for the next step, that is not ready to get on that economic ladder upwards. Because right now I look at this and it's sad, because I'm like, what are we doing to improve the students' lives? And I know you're fighting for them, and I greatly appreciate that. I just can't always wrap my head around, all right, what are we really doing? Because we're spending a lot of money, but we seem to be getting the same bad results. Let's entrust the students and their parents to figure out where they best can learn, is what mine. Yeah. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
At least part of that would be attracting the best and the brightest teachers, okay? And, I'll often say, we paused collaborative time in the blueprint last year, but if you build it, they'll come. That's, to me, the very first step is to attract teachers from across the state. We know how many vacancies there are. We know how many people are teaching who are not yet certified. And that's part of it. You're right, there are other things. I will say, with regard to school choice, the city has a sort of fluid system for students who attend school, but one of the problems is some students don't have the agency to get to the school they want to go to. Some students do. And we all know that that has to do with probably quite often their financial situation.
Right, and I appreciate it. Look, we're all together on this, the problem. It's just the solution is sometimes tough. Thank you.
Delegate Siliberti.
Thank you, sir. There's a gentleman who appears on television, quite a prominent commentator and also a researcher. He's written a book called Failure Factories, and it deals specifically with the school system in Baltimore City. So my question, well, a lot of questions, but to summarize it, how do you respond to the criticism of failure factories?
Well, first of all, I got that book, but I had to return it because it was worth more than the amount I'm allowed to take as a gift. So, so I did. He pretty much gave that book to everybody, but I didn't really feel that it would be appropriate for me to accept that gift. So I can't respond to parts of it because I really didn't get to read it.
And we're kind of getting off the bill at this point.
Yeah, I think we are too.
I'm not familiar with that book, so I don't want to speak to something I didn't read yet.
Well, how about the phrase failure factories?
Failure factories?
That's how he has designated most of the schools in Baltimore City. Not very complimentary, to say the least.
No,
so I was just curious how you respond.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of bad narratives about Baltimore City public schools. One of the things I'll say is that we have great staff and we have great students, and what we're looking for co-conspirators to help us make our school system better, to make Maryland State public schools better. And there are some things that we can do better in our school system. We could have a full school bus fleet so that way our students have a way to get to school and they don't rely on the MTA, and maybe we can decrease our 45% chronic absenteeism rate. All the other 23 jurisdictions have a school bus fleet. We should have one too. We could also—
I know you're answering the question, but we kind of strayed far away from the purpose of this bill.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the remarks most recently made by Delegate Chisholm and Delegate Silverty, my colleagues, who I know care very much about our public school system, and I know they both sort of referenced kind of school choice stuff. So my question is, obviously there are a number of members of this body who think that the education system as a whole would be better off if more public dollars flowed to either private schools or to charter schools. My question is, isn't it true that private school teachers can strike?
Per my understanding, they don't have a prohibition on striking.
And isn't it true that, in fact, in places like Philadelphia, Catholic school teachers have gone on strike in recent years to try to get better working conditions?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And so wouldn't it be silly, in your opinion, or at least I'll say in my opinion, it's silly to advocate for school choice on one hand and for vouchers and for private schools on one hand, and yet deny public school teachers the exact same rights that private school teachers already have to make their work conditions better? Isn't that so?
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Seeing no more questions for the sponsor panel, I will call up the next favorable panel. Thank you, Delegate
We shouldn't have too many. I don't know how we did, but we shouldn't have too many. We really tried to control it for y'all.
I have another favorable panel, Adam Redden, Pia Morrison, Sarah Gillen, okay, and just a reminder, witnesses get 2 minutes to testify. Whoever's prepared, go ahead and start.
Thank you to Chairman Wells and committee members. My name is Adam Redden. I'm a public school teacher in Harford County Public Schools, speaking on behalf of the Greater Baltimore Democratic Socialists of America, GBDSA. We respectfully submit this letter of support for House Bill 1492, collective bargaining, public employees, revocation of certification, and school and libraries employees' right to strike. This bill would repeal the ban on striking for public school teachers and librarians, ending years of unconstitutional restrictions on the First Amendment rights of our state's educators. First, we would like to thank Delegate Ebersol for sponsoring this important legislation, and the chair and other members of the committee who have signed on as co-sponsors. It is great to see that this newly formed committee is committed to advancing labor rights from the start. We are writing to ask the committee both to advance House Bill 1492 and to stress its urgency and necessity. In 2025, school districts across the state did not receive the local funding they needed to provide safe and quality education to our students. In my own time as a public school teacher, I have watched class sizes increase as funding decreased. Meanwhile, us educators are denied by state law the only tool available to the working class and promised to us by the First Amendment, the right to peacefully protest by going on strike. Our schools are not just underfunded, they are unsafe for educators and students alike. Despite years of effort, our teachers and students continue to be exposed to lead-ridden water, rodents in classrooms, and mold in our walls. Over the last 5 years, there have been 397 school shootings. Meanwhile, a lack of security results in administrators having to email staff security camera footage and asking them, who is this? I have bared witness to this myself here in Anne Arundel County. Where was I? Currently, there is nothing teachers and librarians can do except ask politely while we wait and hope in vain for change that never comes. Opponents of this bill will cynically say that teachers and librarians will strike. I ask for a favorable vote.
Honorable Chairwoman Wells and members of the committee, my name is Pia Morrison, and as president of SEIU Local 500, I am here representing the voices of more than 20,000 working people, including over 10,000 educational support professionals. Let's be candid about what this bill really is about. It's about power and fairness. Right now, when negotiations break down, school employees are expected to simply accept whatever the employer decides. They are told to trust the process that too often leaves workers underpaid, understaffed, and ignored. Meanwhile, the same workers who feed our students, drive our buses, support the education of our disabled students, and keep our schools clean and safe are denied the most basic leverage that workers across the economy rely on, and this bill changes that. This bill simply recognizes that public school and library employees are workers, and workers deserve the same fundamental right to strike afforded their colleagues in the private sector. It also protects workers from retaliation, because no one should risk losing their livelihood for standing up for fair treatment. I want you to understand that striking is never a first choice. It is a deterrent that ensures both sides find resolution at the negotiations table. It is a tool that is utilized by workers when every other path has failed. The truth is simple. Employers only bargain fairly when workers have real power at the table. And without balance, collective bargaining becomes little more than collective begging. And when support staff are forced to work for wages that don't keep up with the cost of living, when they have to work in buildings that jeopardize their health and make them sick, when vacancies go unfilled, and when burnout drives experienced workers out of our schools, the students pay the price too. If Maryland truly values the people who make our public schools function every day, then we must treat those workers with the same rights that others already have. SEIU Local 500 urges a favorable report on HB 1492, and thank you.
You don't need to push the button.
Oh, I don't have to press. All right, thank you. It says that. So my name is Sarah Gillen. I am a TAC member, and I am also a member of the Greater Baltimore DSA, and I am here in support of House Bill 1492. So I am a career changer, and I am new to education, and I am new to the union. I wanted to say to you that I came into this work as a career changer because I knew as a 23-year-old woman that I could not afford to do this job with one job and be able to afford my housing costs in New York City. And I thought coming here to Maryland to do it, things would be a little bit better. And I was wrong, because this year now, I have a second job in order to be able to pay my bills. And that gets in the way of me being able to do what I need to do for my kids. So now I'll give you my prepared testimony. Counties and boards of education may sit across the table from teachers and bargain, but our bargaining power is not equal. And it can't be fair when we're forced to accept inadequate pay and working conditions, or my alternative is to quit the job I have waited my life to do. The right to strike is the equalizer at that bargaining table. And I am not a greedy woman, but I want to be able to do my job to be able to do my day job alone so that I can give my personal time to planning for my kids. Class size, the built environment, and safety all matter to student learning, but my ability to bargain over these is stifled because my voice, my speech, is effectively banned. And that's right. I think it is my constitutional right to free speech being suppressed by our state government, because when teachers can't strike, or at least call the strike, then educators' collective voice and collective action are silenced. Students' learning conditions are our working conditions, and we need all the tools to have equal power at that bargaining table. Thank you.
Do we have questions for this favorable panel? Seeing none, thank you all for your testimony. We have two virtual favorable witnesses that we will bring up now. We have Anita Bass and Julian Ohanian. If you're prepared, unmute. If you're watching the live stream, you need to turn that off. You're about 30 seconds behind. But if you're prepared, please unmute Ms. Bass and go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead with your testimony.
Okay, great. Thank you. My name is Anita Bass, and I'm here to speak on House Bill 1492. I'd like to thank the committee, the chair, and Delegate Ebersol, and everybody that's there as visitors watching. The right to strike is not about wanting to walk off the job. It's about fairness. It's about balance. It's about working with your staff together. I forgot to mention this, I am the proud president of Local 4538, which represents Apple Store workers and also Baltimore County Public Library workers. So I'm from the library system. Public library workers and dedicated public services. servants. They show up every day for their communities. They help families, job seekers, students, seniors. They provide services that keep our communities informed and supported. But dedication should not mean silence. It should not mean accepting unsafe conditions, chronic understanding, or wages that do not reflect their skills. The right to strike is not the first step in a dispute. It is a last resort for workers. We rely on every other effort to resolve an issue. As when workers have the right to strike, strikes are often avoided. And why? Because the existence of that right encourages real serious negotiations before things ever get that bad. Workers are asking for equality. They are asking for the same fundamental labor rights that many other workers already have. The ability to withhold your labor is about dignity. It's about respect, and it's about ensuring that the people who make our institutions great. And I'd like to thank you and ask you for a favorable report on House Bill 1492. Thank you.
And thank you for your testimony. Julian Ohanian, if you are, okay, thank you. Go ahead and begin your testimony.
Hi, thank you. My name is Julie Ohanian. I'm a high school English teacher in Baltimore City, a leader of Greater Baltimore Democratic Socialists of America, the Maryland Right to Strike Coalition, and a member of the Baltimore Teachers Union. I would be there today in person to testify in support of House Bill 1482, but I'm with my toddler currently. So colleagues and I began a campaign for the right to strike because we saw the ways in which the promise of a fair and equal public education wasn't happening, despite all of our extra hours, all of our going the extra mile that we did as educators. We saw that the ways our public services were being dismantled left and right, on top of decades-long austerity and underfunding, as the Curran Commission documented in clear, stark terms. Although this trend has greatly accelerated in the last year, it's one we public servants have struggled under for far too long. Those of us who serve the public do so because we believe so strongly in what we do that we make it work under impossible circumstances. We teachers continue to teach the skills and love of writing, of reading, problem solving, and critical thinking, even when our students carry with them miles-wide gaps left gaping from what can only be called institutional neglect. Our classrooms burst at the seams. Our kids lack for foundational reading skills and fluency. The kids who need more support are left to fend for themselves. Instead of providing the skilled support staff and ratios that we know our kids need to get out of this crisis, we pass them off to overextended classroom teachers like me to handle alone, with rosters of 150, 175 or more students, most of whom are struggling. No one is getting what they need. We public servants are the best guardians of the public good that we have. And when we can't strike, we can't secure the working conditions that best enable us to do what we love most, to serve the public, to make sure that everyone is taken care of, and that the least of us have what we need to survive, to transcend our humble beginnings, to flourish. I urge you to grant what shouldn't have to be a question. I urge you to vote yes.
Please wrap up.
Yes, thank you. On House Bill 1482. To fight and to strike for the quality of life for every single person who walks through our doors every day. What do you stand for if not for this? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ohanian. Seeing if we have any questions from the committee for you. All right, seeing as there are none, that concludes our bill hearing on HB 1492. All right. Okay, we're joined by Delegate Long, so we will move now to Delegate Bob Long. Give just one moment, Delegate Long. Well, you can go up there. I know, yeah. While people are exiting your room, it'll be a little loud.
Madam Chair, is it okay if I
Yes.
bring up
Yes, please.
Mr. Gray? He is signed up.
I have Mr., wait, I'm looking at the wrong one, excuse me. Go back. Thomas Gray. Yes, thank you. For HB 1072. Sorry, there's a different bill. I got the bills confused. Your bill is 1072.
Yes, ma'am.
And I have Thomas Gray, Mr. Thomas Gray.
Tommy Gray's the gentleman to my right.
Correct.
He's
How
already
are you doing
bringing him
today?
up. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
You may begin, delegate.
Man, your seat's low enough. For the record, I'm Delegate Bob Long. I'm here to testify on HB 1072. And I don't know if anybody noticed it, but I'm actually coming with my hat in my hand. Oh. For the record, I'm Delegate Bob Long. I'm here to testify on HB 1072. I'm coming with my hat in my hand. Hopefully everyone knows what that means. And it's a work hat, because we're ready to go to work in our district. This bill, what we're trying to do is to give Mr. Gray and some other people in our district a chance to bid on jobs with MDTA, with the Key Bridge, rebuilding of the Key Bridge. The bill was amended because I know there was some talk about being 10% over. They were worried about cost. So we amended the bill to remove that and just make it a priority for our local people that live in our district to have a shot at going to work. The Key Bridge has caused some real problems, the loss of it. I'm sure many of you felt it, but we really feel it where we live because that's our lifeline. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gray, and he'll give you his idea what we're trying to accomplish.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Tom Gray. I'm Vice President of Gray Transport in Sparrows Point, Maryland. The owner, Frances Gray, she's couldn't make it today. She's president, owner. She's a WBE with the city, state, and county. This is in regards to Bill HB 1072, the state procurement of the Key Bridge. Our company, Gray Transport, a dump truck company, has been operating in District 6 for 38 years, primarily working through central and northern Baltimore. Approximately 6 months ago, before the Key Bridge collapse, we opened a recycling facility to make state, county, and city topsoil and bioretainments on the south side of the Key Bridge. The goal was to better utilize our trucks and support our operations in the region and our employees. Unfortunately, within 1 month of getting the facility open, the Key Bridge was struck and collapsed. Due to resulting logistic changes and increases in costs for customers, we were forced to shut down this plant in total. In total, we invested roughly $300,000 in equipment, not including rental costs on equipment and employee expenses. The operation had to be closed immediately. Since then, with the Key Bridge reconstruction project moving forward, our company was asked by a Sessler company, a subcontractor, I believe, of Kiewit, to submit bids for trucking work. We provided several pricing options. However, we were told the material could not be hauled to certain locations we proposed. Later, we learned the materials, in fact, were taken to some of these locations we had bid on. Instead of local contractors, the work was awarded to an internet-based app company that relies on out-of-state drivers, owner-operators working for extremely low rates. After 38 years of working in District 6, we are simply asking for the opportunity to participate in this project. Our company employs 25 people along with subcontractors and depends on this work. With the Key Bridge gone, our business has been significantly impacted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gray. Are there any questions from the committee?
Well, thank you. Again, we need whatever we can get as far as help to try to get this man back into, to do work on the Key Bridge. We have several other companies that are willing to go to work in our district. We're not asking to overbid. We're just asking for the right, if we're in the area, why not give it to a local company? And especially the impact. I mean, this man's about ready to go out of business, and I know for a fact There's some other companies that are really having a tough time because we depend on the Key Bridge. So if we can do anything to help him out and help any of the other local businesses in our district, would be much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Delegate Long,
Thank
for the
you.
bill, and thank you for being a longtime business owner.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, in the state of Maryland.
Yeah.
Seeing no further questions from the committee, that concludes our bill hearing on HB 1072. We will move on to Delegate Young. I think I see his staff. Are you here to present both bills? Okay. Just which one? 1570. Okay, so we'll call up Bill 1570, which will be presented by Delegate Kaylee Young staff. And then just so you know, 1382 will be the next bill, and that's our last bill of the day that the delegate has. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Wells.
Can you just wait one moment? There's a lot of noise back there, so we'll just, okay, perfect. You can begin now.
Good afternoon, Chair Wells, Vice Chair Kier, and members of the committee. My name is Daniel Mosley. I'm a legislative aide for State Delegate Kaylee Young, and I'm here to introduce House Bill 1570, a good government bill that will bring much needed transparency, accountability, and consistency to the way our state government develops its operational standards. Every day, state agencies make decisions and implement laws based on a wide array of standards. These can be technical benchmarks, operational guidelines, or procedural rules. While often unseen, these standards have profound impact on the lives of Marylanders, yet there is no single consistent process for how they are created. This lack of uniform framework can lead to standards that are developed without adequate public input that are not based on the best available evidence or that become outdated over time. HB 1570 addresses this problem by establishing a clear, fair, and transparent process for the development and review of all state government standards. This bill creates a common sense framework built on the principles of good government. It requires standards to be data-driven and transparent. It mandates that agencies seek consensus among stakeholders. It establishes a process for independent third-party review to resolve disputes. It requires that all standards be periodically reviewed to ensure they remain up to date. This is not about creating more bureaucracy. This is about creating a smarter, more efficient, and more accountable government. It is about ensuring that government rules It is about ensuring that rules that govern our state are developed in the open with the input of those who they affect and based on the best available knowledge. By passing this bill, we can increase public trust in our government and ensure that the state operates with the highest degree of fairness and integrity. I urge you to report favorable on the House Bill 1570. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're doing, are you Mr. Wahid?
Yes.
Okay, you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
I'm supposed to be the co-panelist also, but it's okay. Witness? Okay.
Yeah.
I have facts to share, and they concern the purpose of the bill. It establishes transparent, accountable, science-based framework for Maryland standards, embeds transformative economic efficiency by enabling rapid adoption of validated innovations, integrates decision support, multidisciplinary expertise, and independent review, requires periodic reassessment using current technological best practices. Fiscal responsibility, Maryland faces multi-year structural budget pressures approaching $8.8 billion. Administrative delays can reach 300 to 400 days, compounding costs. Rapid adoption of validated standards preserves hundreds of millions in expenditures. Properly structured frameworks can generate substantially large efficiency gains. Proven Maryland leadership since 2020 and for decades prior, Techno-Economic Standards Group with the University of Maryland College Park have delivered scalable, data-driven frameworks, improved procurement, infrastructure, operations, and regulatory processes. Several frameworks adopted nationally, demonstrating transformative economic efficiency at scale. Alignment and international collaboration. Methodologies of NIST and academies of science, engineering, and medicine are included, collaborating with European Union and platforms such as the Advanced Technology Acceleration Initiative has delivered results, positions Maryland at present to extend transformative economic efficiency nationally and internationally. What the bill does prevents costly delays in administrative stagnation, avoids reliance on biased or unreviewed expertise, ensures transparent, reproducible data and independent review, institutionalizes transformative economic efficiency without expanding bureaucracy or any additional cost.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Waheed. And thank you for presenting the bill on behalf of the delegate. Just seeing if we have any questions for the bill sponsor, Delegate Tomlinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was wondering, sorry, what was your name again?
Hussein Waheed.
Thank you. I think in your speech you mentioned something about modernizing procurement with the bill.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that?
Yes. The procedures and the standards are in the bill. What they do is they make these steps for procurement or any operation totally transparent, feasible, and reproducible. And it is done while you are implementing something that is required in the job. I'll give you an example. 100,000 inspections are conducted in a department, let's say. All of them follow these procedures, these standards. But at the same time, there are groups that do not even know what is being done. And they are usually doing data reviews, or they are in administrative functions. So what happens is there's a big deviation between what has worked in the field, what has worked with the technology at present, versus what is being evaluated. So in a lot of hearings, you know, these administrative coordinators will openly state that they do not know the laws that are in place at present. So what this bill does is it clarifies how to use existing laws properly without adding any additional burden, meaning the 100,000 inspections that are done conform to these requirements, to these specifications, and they resolve problems fast enough because they use an independent consensus-based standard that is required by NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology. So all this works very well in the field with the stakeholders, but in the evaluation, in the assessments that take place internally, it may be totally ignored, and the opposite may happen. And that creates a lot of problems for the technical people. The techno-economic services of the state are impacted tremendously because all these people are subject to this one-sided valuation of what they have done. So there is very little room for them to innovate at all. And what happens is by several years, innovative technologies are not utilized fully. They're utilized partially by some people, but not by all. But when all of them can utilize it quickly, within a few minutes, that's when the transformative economic efficiency can be delivered. And the state delivers integrative knowledge solutions on the largest scale compared to any other entity. $67 billion are spent just to achieve this purpose. Each delivery of a solution, of a standard, represents that value that is delivered to the citizens. There should be no barrier. We should accelerate this process. Why should there be any artificial change? There is no need to. If 100,000 inspections have passed, and if it has worked for largest agencies, it has worked across continents, why should we prevent that?
Thank you very much. Oh, sorry. All right, seeing no more questions, this concludes the bill hearing on 1570. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waheed. And we'll move next to Delegate Young's second bill of the day with us, HB 1382. Delegate, do you have a sponsor panel? Just indicating, I know there's quite a few people that signed up, but if, all right.
That's fine.
We're good.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
First off, I want to thank y'all for indulging my legislative aid on the last bill as I'm trying to run around these House of Delegates with all the bills and things. I hope he did a great job. I was a little mad I missed him. Today, Delegate Young here in support of House Bill 1382. House Bill 1382, folks, is about the Constitution of the United States. When we all were sworn in, we took an oath to support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. As a legislator and a civil rights attorney, I'm deeply committed to defending the constitutional rights of all Marylanders. House Bill 1382 is a testament to that commitment. Currently, in order to do business with the state of Maryland through procurement, companies must sign a certification that they will not boycott the state of Israel. This requirement is a clear, prima facie, as in on its face, violation of the First Amendment of the Constitution of the United States that we all swore an oath to protect. It's also a violation of Article 40 of the Maryland Constitution. This certification may also violate the Commerce Clause, Equal Protection Clause, the Due Process Clauses of the Constitution. It interferes with interstate commerce, discriminates against businesses based on their political viewpoints, and the vague language coupled with the penalty of perjury creates a chilling effect on free expression. Marylanders retain the freedom to respond to the actions of any country through peaceful means. We can boycott our president, but we cannot, if we want to do business with the state of Maryland, boycott the state of Israel. This, in my opinion, is protected political speech, which receives the highest level of scrutiny from constitutional analysis. Passing the bill aligns with Maryland's economic interests, our commitment to diversity and free speech. In these challenging economic times, we must ensure that our state remains open to business for all, without imposing ideological tests that exclude qualified Marylanders from participating in state contracts. To put it plainly, our businesses don't want to talk about it. Many of you might not want to talk about it today. So why do we make our businesses have to deal with it in the first place? We are a state that welcomes diversity. Our strengths lie in it. By countering national trends that seek to suppress dissenting voices, we should reaffirm Maryland as a welcoming state, a free state that values all perspectives. It's our duty to allow individuals and businesses to express themselves freely. Any Marylander who wants to engage in free enterprise with our state should have the ability to do so without compelled political speech. House Bill 1382 is both the right thing to do and the best course of action for our state. It upholds our constitutional values, fosters an inclusive economy, and reinforces our state's commitment to justice and free expression. For those reasons, I urge a favorable report, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Shelley Cohen Fudge. I'm here to represent Maryland's 2 chapters of Jewish Voice for Peace, JVP DC Metro and JVP Baltimore, in support of HB 1382. Advocating for boycotts, divestment, and sanctions against any foreign country is protected as a form of political speech under the First Amendment. A 1982 Supreme Court ruling unambiguously stated that boycotts are intended to bring about political, social, and economic change, and as such, are a form of political speech. Previous to Governor Hogan's anti-BDS executive order in 2017, this same legislative body chose not to pass legislation restricting speech advocating for BDS. For 3 years in a row, I testified, among many other Maryland citizens, including many Jewish Marylanders, who testified in the General Assembly against its passage. We celebrated for protecting free speech each year. We were successful. This is the first time I'm disclosing the following information in public. Our great state's congressman, Jamie Raskin, as a state senator, helped us defeat this bill behind the scenes every year it was introduced. I feel confident that I can reveal this due to Jamie's dedication to protect our constitutional rights and free speech as a constitutional law professor. I've known him for 25 years, and this bill provides an essential means of protecting Marylanders' right to free speech. For that reason, we urge the committee to return a favorable report to HB 13.
Thank you. Next witness.
Thank you so much, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Zainab Chaudhry. I am a director for the CARES office in Maryland. CARES is a Council on American Islamic Relations. We are the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization, and we work proudly within a broad-based interfaith coalition to advance justice, dignity, and humanity for all of our communities across the state. I am here today to respectfully urge a favorable report on House Bill 1382. We want to express our appreciation to Delegate Kalen Young for his leadership on this issue, for standing on the right side of history. You have my written testimony before you. I won't waste your time with going through it verbatim, but what I would encourage you to do is, as you deliberate upon this bill, to consider whether or not the constitutional rights of our community members across the state deserve to be prioritized above the interests of a foreign government, regardless of what that government is. And that's essentially what this boils down to. This is a matter of protecting our constitutional rights as Americans to engage in the right to be able to boycott, which is a time-honored tradition that has been historically very effective in advancing civil rights and justice across the religious spectrum. And this particular executive order that was signed in 2017 by then Governor Hogan was signed into effect after several failed attempts, as my friend Shelley mentioned, through several failed attempts to pass a similar measure through the General Assembly. And the reason why those measures did not pass through the General Assembly was because our General Assembly recognized the unconstitutionality of this particular measure. And then Governor Hogan signed it into law as a favor and at the request of specific supporters of his. And unfortunately, it has continued to be an active executive order. We believe that this kind of executive order has no place within our state, within our government, within our society. As someone who was proudly born and raised in Baltimore, I believe that it is a mark, it is a stain on the history and the fabric of our state, and we respectfully urge a favorable report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for our panel at this time? Okay. I don't see or hear any. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm sorry, Delegate Fair.
Delegate, thank you for bringing the bill forward. I just want to kind of cut to a very simple question that I think a lot of us are probably thinking, which is you pointed to a lot of constitutional problems in the bill that we're trying to address with the bill, and I really appreciate that effort. Has there been attempted legal action taken on this, and has the courts ruled on any of these as being unconstitutional?
Sure. So, and thank you for the question. First, from a standpoint of the courts, there was a case, Ali versus Frosh, I believe. Yeah. The challenge in that case was standing. Yeah. Mr. Ali, who's a former delegate, did not, at the time, he had not actually, here's the document that you have to sign. He did not actually sign the document. So he didn't actually bring or attempt to get a contract through procurement. And this consequence of that, he didn't have to actually sign the document, and thus he lost on a standing ground. You didn't have standing, you weren't harmed because you didn't actually have to sign that document. And so what we're simply saying is that we don't need to have to, do we want to make a business, or do we want to have to go down that route of litigation? Yeah. Or as a legislature, we can do the right thing, which is to simply, like, look, I'm not, most people know where I'm at and where my colleagues are on this issue when it comes to Israel and geopolitics, but that's not what this is really about. This is about First Amendment. And we're simply saying that if We don't need to make our businesses have to even engage in this conversation to do business with the state of Maryland. Let's just get the conversation, keep it where it is, and let our Marylanders enjoy their First Amendment right and allow them to be able to engage in business with our state.
The legislature. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Sure, you're welcome. And just for me, just now shifting, can you say your names again so I can make sure I haven't checked off?
Sure. Shelley Cohen Fudge.
Okay, and your name again?
Zainab Chaudhry.
Okay, thank you. All right, this concludes this panel. I'm going to call up Mohammed Aboukader, Zani Chaudhry, Catherine Kettler. You just.
That was myself.
Okay. And I'm going to bring one more up. Mary Ella Jordock. You may begin. What do you guys want to go? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Wills and members of the House GLE Committee for the opportunity to testify in strong support of House Bill 1382 today, protecting the constitutionally protected right of Marylanders to boycott the State of Israel. My name is Mohammed Aboukader, and I'm speaking today not just as a Marylander, but as a Palestinian whose family has lived under the brutal occupation of the Zionist regime for over 78 years. In 2016, one of my cousins with the same name, Mohammed Aboukader, was kidnapped, tortured, and burned alive by state-sponsored Israeli settlers in East Jerusalem. He was only 16 years old and never knew a day of freedom in his life. He woke up every day not knowing if he could make it to school, if he could visit neighboring cities, or if he could pray in Masjid al-Aqsa, one of the holiest sites in our faith, which is only a 25-minute walk from his village. If the Israelis had let him live to adulthood, he would have lived his life in constant fear of losing his house to one of those same Israeli settlers, as has happened to over half of the land in our village, Shofat. And yet somehow my family has it better, much better, than our people living just a few miles west of them in Gaza, who have been living under 3 years, almost 3 full years of genocide, starvation, mass detainment, indiscriminately. Although there are no government or health institutions left to actually count the dead, The Lancet, one of the most prestigious medical journals in the world, estimated in January of 2025, before the famine escalated to the point it's at now, that over 75,000 Palestinians had died. And this doesn't account for the long-term effects of starvation, of the lack of sanitation and exposure to debris. As Americans, we can't even begin to imagine the suffering of Palestinians, and while their oppression dwarfs ours in every way possible, I also have to remind you guys of the oppression that your Palestinian constituents face at the hands of Israel. Myself, my family has lived in Jerusalem for as long as we can remember. I can point to the exact plot of land that we lived on 600 years ago, and yet I have no right to return. I have no means of getting residency. The most I can do is visit. I visited for a day last summer. I was held for hours at the border. Having said all this, I ask you, why wouldn't I, as a Palestinian, boycott the State of Israel? Why wouldn't any of you, anyone who cares about the human rights of Palestinians, boycott Israel? And why is there an executive order that bars people from doing so? Although this executive order is unconstitutional, meaningless, and immoral, and it could be overturned in court if it was actually enforced, it still stands as a testament to our failure as human beings to stand up for Palestinians, and intimidates Maryland residents and institutions from fulfilling their moral obligation to not do business with people who bring bloodshed and suffering to other people. Vote yes for human dignity and for your constituents' rights. Pass House Bill 1382.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Ella Jordak. I am a resident of Annapolis, Maryland. I am here today as a founding member of Anne Arundel for Palestine. We are a multi-faith, multi-generational group that is dedicated to helping realize Palestinian self-determination, and we are here in strong support of HB 1382. An executive order that limits the ability of our members and our neighbors across the state to boycott their own purchases and business dealings is not only a restriction of free speech, it is morally unjust. We are not alone in that thinking. The First Amendment upholds our ability to engage in free speech, as do rulings from the Supreme Court. In fact, they ruled that boycotting is, quote, the highest rung on the hierarchy of First Amendment values. In my personal capacity, I am a second-generation business owner. My name is on my business, and so are my morals. I openly list which organizations I donate money or time to and what cause I'm aligned with. I firmly believe that where you spend your money or where you don't is a fundamental part of being a civically minded individual. It is deeply concerning that individuals and businesses that engage in free and protected political speech are limited because of an executive order. Regardless of whether or not a business owner has a moral stake in speaking out against a foreign country, the state of Maryland is compelling the free speech of these entities under the penalty of perjury when signing off on this specific anti-BDS form. This is an unjust practice for Maryland to engage in, and HB 1382 would seek to ensure that our state remains one that values human rights and civic engagement, rather than penalizing advocacy on behalf of oppressed communities across the world. In essence, this existing executive order allows the state to boycott boycotters and to take part in political action against citizens who are exercising their very important First Amendment rights. For these reasons, we ask that you find a favorable report for HB 1382. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Katie Kretler, and I live in Anne Arundel County. I strongly support HB 1382. The boycott, divest, and sanctions movement is one of the few ways for people worldwide to support Palestinian self-determination and basic human rights. It's based on the same peaceful tactics that worked against the apartheid regime in South Africa. Prior to that, Martin Luther King Jr. in 1956 boycotted Jim Crow, Alabama as his first step into the civil rights movement. Dr. King was criminalized for doing so. Boycotts became central to the civil rights movement of the 60s and later the farm workers movement of the 70s. Since 1982, as has been mentioned, the Supreme Court has recognized that nonviolent boycotts intended to advance civil rights are forms of speech or conduct that are entitled to protection under the First and 14th Amendments. Recently, state-level anti-BDS orders and laws have been used to stifle free speech. For example, the University of Georgia system canceled a speaking engagement when the speaker refused to sign an oath not to boycott Israel. Anti-BDS laws are unconstitutional and are being successfully challenged, including in that case of the speaker in Georgia. I want to be able to live with myself 10 or 20 years from now as I look back on how I lived through the moral catastrophe of our time, the genocide and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. That is why I call on this committee to stand up for constitutionally protected free speech and conduct against the rising tide of authoritarianism. For these reasons and many more, I ask the committee to give HB 1382 a favorable report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the panel? Delegate Tomlinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Anybody can answer this. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, I'm not any kind of lawyer. But how is this a First Amendment issue? I mean, we're not saying that we're not recording.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not in
Our
charge.
delegate is a lawyer.
I am a constitutional lawyer.
There we go.
To be very clear, I am a constitutional lawyer. I served as the public policy director at the ACLU of Maryland. I also served as the deputy director of the Office of Equity and Civil Rights, where we did discrimination investigations, a whole bunch of other constitutional-based analysis. How does it violate the First Amendment? Because it's compelled political speech. Political speech is a heightened protection. It's a fundamentally protected speech. So when we talk about political speech, we're talking about the type of speech that, when chilled, tends to violate your right. So here we have a document that you have to sign that speaks to a political point of view. The courts, the Supreme Court, will review this point of view with a strict scrutiny. That means that whatever the restriction is must be narrowly tailored to, the government has to have a compelling government interest to impose the restriction, and that restriction must be narrowly tailored to effectuate that restriction, which means that it can't be overly broad, essentially. Here, however, we have a document that I don't think rises to the occasion of being compelling from a standpoint of the government's requirement to need to have to restrict it. And again, it's political speech. So it's going to be already very difficult for the courts to uphold it. And then, is it narrowly tailored? I don't think it's narrowly tailored. It's broadly applied to all Maryland businesses in order to do business with the state of Maryland, which has nothing to do with an engagement with a foreign country.
Now, I can understand if what went down in 2017, the executive order, if the executive order had established that that any business in the state of Maryland cannot participate in a boycott on Israel, that would be certainly a First Amendment issue. But the whole executive order, what the governor did back in 2017 was just say, if you have any interest in doing business with the state as a contractor or subcontractor, you cannot participate in these boycotts. So this isn't going out, I mean, it's not taking away, if you still have the ability and the choice as a Maryland business, if you want to participate and boycott Israel, the state's just saying, we're just not going to work with you. I mean, the state turns away people all the time for contracts for a number of reasons, whether they're not in good standing with the State Department of Assessments and Taxation, whether you haven't paid up, you're not paid up on your taxes with the comptroller. So there's a number of reasons. There's a number of reasons why the state does not do business with certain contractors, and this is just another one of them. So I'm having trouble seeing how it's
right. And so again, it's a matter of compelling political speech. The state and the government cannot compel you. It's a violation of free speech for the government to compel you to express a particular viewpoint in order to engage with that government. So here we have the government requiring you to say that you will not boycott a particular country. That's a political statement. And in order to engage with business with the state, you have to make this political statement and do so under the penalty of perjury, which is up to a 10-year penalty. So that's what is, I mean, let me get the document and I'll pass it to you. Like, it says it, under the penalty of perjury, you have to say this, and if you lie on the document, then you could be charged, literally. That's compelling political speech to do business with the state of Maryland. That's a clear violation of the Constitution of the United States. It's a clear violation of your First Amendment right. You should be able to speak. The Supreme Court has found that you are able to speak any political speech, and the government cannot compel you to do so. And if they are going to do so, they have to have a compelling government interest, and it has to be narrowly tailored. It's a clear violation here.
Gotcha. Okay. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Delegate. I have a question about the executive order. So should that executive order die when the governor left his office?
No. It's in effect right now.
Actual executive order?
Not only is the executive order still in effect, but the document is still a requirement for people to sign. If you go right now to the procurement websites and try to get a contract, this will be part of the documents that you have to sign.
So then what does it mean, executive order? I thought executive order is not a legal document. It's when the executive change hands, that should be invalid.
No, that's not how it works. An executive order remains in effect unless and until the legislature changes it, the courts determine that it's unconstitutional, or a subsequent executive repeals it. Therefore, it remains in effect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the questions. Seeing no further questions for this panel, we do have additional people to call, beginning with Melody Hessian. Hessian-like session. Thank you very much. Sable Stewart, Khadija Abdallah, Reem Azam, and John Monfred. Okay, thank you.
I believe John is testifying remotely.
Okay, oh, you're right, he is virtual, thank you. Okay, we'll begin with you all, thank you.
Chairperson and committee members, my name is Sable Stewart, and I'm a Jewish resident of Baltimore and a member of the Baltimore chapter of Jewish Voices for Peace. I am speaking today in strong support of HB 1382. Since 1948, there have been hundreds of UN resolutions condemning Israel's human rights abuses and violations of international law. These atrocities are well documented. In recent months, even more egregiously discriminatory laws have been enacted in the Knesset, including one that called for the death penalty to be enacted on Palestinian detainees in cases where such a penalty would not be given to Jewish Israelis convicted of the same crime. Within 1948 borders, Palestinian Arab communities face staggering inequity in access to housing and building permits, resulting in rampant demolitions of Arab-owned property and transfers of land and ownership out of Palestinian hands.
In non-majority Jewish areas, fewer bomb shelters are built, and in mixed areas, there have been reports of Palestinian citizens being denied entry into bomb shelters when bombs are falling. This is a blatant apartheid system. Calls for boycotts of entities that support this injustice should not in any way be censured by our state government. Such attempts to curtail these political boycotts are an infringement upon First Amendment rights regarding free speech. Through the actions of our government, we are all made complicit in this injustice. Through the Israeli state's insistence that it somehow represents all Jews, and through my own familial history with Medinat Yisrael, I am called to resist. Political boycotts are a time-honored means of doing so. Though the fight to end South African apartheid is now held up as a shining example of global solidarity for the cause of justice, which it was, those that called for anti-apartheid boycotts at the time were branded as extremists, rabble-rousers, and even terrorists for doing so. I urge the committee to help our state be on the right side of history in this struggle against an apartheid state and return a favorable report on HB 1382. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. My name is Reverend Melody Hession-Sigmund, Assistant to my Bishop for Public Policy in the Delaware-Maryland Synod of the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. First of all, I am here because we have Palestinian Lutheran pastors, colleagues, and Palestinian Lutheran congregations in the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Jordan and the Holy Land who are living under apartheid and afraid for their lives, and we love them and we are worried about them. I am also here because we have Lutheran pastors in Maryland, like Reverend Mark Brown, who worked with the Lutheran World Federation serving Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, came home, and is mobilizing our congregations around boycotts. Like Pastor Sarah Yoder, who visited our siblings in Christ in the West Bank years ago, saw the checkpoints herself, came home, and started boycotting HP, for example, since HP Tech made the checkpoints. Thank you, you can sit down. There is a fear that because our churches provide essential feeding ministries, recovery houses, etc., and that because many of these ministries receive state-contracted funding, that churches could lose their funding for food pantries if they decide to boycott Israeli produce, for example, since Israeli produce often includes products that are grown on stolen land. If someone could please give Delegate Young the opportunity to explain on the record why this executive order does not apply to our congregations, we would be very grateful. That would be very useful to us. But for our testimony today, what I would like to invite you all to understand is the role that this executive order plays in creating anti-democratic fear. Executive order or no executive order, Christians and churches, and all of us really, need to be brave and stand up for what's right, even if we are afraid sometimes. But also, this executive order is wrong, so we urge a favorable report on HB 1382. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Khadija. I'm a student speaking on behalf of the University System of Maryland Divestment Coalition for Palestine, testifying in support of House Resolution 1382. Despite passing divestment resolutions at UMBC, UMD, and Towson, the discriminatory anti-BDS executive order is constantly leveraged by our university administrations and Board of Regents as an excuse against divestment from war. The people on the other side claim that BDS, a nonviolent grassroots movement, does not promote dialogue, is anti-Semitic, and singles out Israel. Dialogue necessitates an equal playing field and promotes a false sense of accomplishment. BDS exists as a tool to put financial pressure on Israel to treat Palestinians as human beings. Additionally, there's a strong anti-Zionist Jewish movement that supports BDS, and I actually believe it is anti-Semitic to conflate the actions of a psychotic, genocidal apartheid state with the Jewish people. And yes, we are singling out Israel, because Israel has singled itself out on the global stage as a pariah state committing genocide, ethnic cleansing, and apartheid. We are directly responsible for Maryland's money funding this genocide that has taken the lives of over 150,000 and reduced Gaza into rubble for neoliberal settler expansion. We hear this order excused under the claim of not being materially enforced. Let me be clear. This bill is not enforced to protect the state from getting sued, but its existence serves to appease the genocidal Zionist agenda that prioritizes symbolic commitments to upholding their settler state over our constitutional rights. You must prioritize democracy, and you must vote today to repeal this repressive order that suppresses our rights and freedom of expression and actively funds genocide. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Rima Zam, and I'm here on behalf of the Howard County Muslim Alliance.
The executive order at the heart of this bill represents politically motivated repression and a grave moral failure. Despite the duty to prevent and punish genocide, our federal government made an exception for Israel, violating its own laws and international law. But that failing does not absolve us. State governments should uphold their moral and legal duties in their own capacity. Instead, our largely democratic assembly failed to repeal Hogan's anti-BDS order signed under Trump, which prohibits Marylanders, including many who've lost family in Gaza, from exercising their right to boycott. This order has been framed as anti-discriminatory, but it does the opposite. It suppresses freedom of political expression and shields a foreign government from peaceful protest. Civil rights groups and First Amendment scholars have addressed the unconstitutional nature of this order, so I'll focus on the moral urgency. Official figures account for only direct deaths from Israeli munitions. But in the genocide's early days, the Israeli leaders planned for mass death through deprivation. As then Defense Minister Yoav Gallant declared, there will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals, and we are acting accordingly. And so they did. Research on Gaza's true death toll has been largely buried and must be highlighted. Professors Richard Hill and Gideon Puglia, in their work titled Skewering History, The Odious Politics of Counting Gaza's Dead, estimated 680,000 deaths by April 25, 2025, including 479,000 children. That was months before the famine was declared, which hits children the hardest. 479,000 children killed by last April before the famine. So who do our elected officials represent when they act in the interest of a foreign state committing genocide against our constitutional rights, against the American people's will, against America's good, and against humanity's good? So just as the crimes of this genocide are being documented for history, so too will be your vote and stance on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the panel for your testimony. We'll move to virtual. We have, let's see quick. Okay, John Monfred. All right, I see you there. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Wells, Vice Chair Kerr, members of the committee. My name is John Monfred. I'm a Jewish Marylander, resident of Baltimore City, and a member of Jewish Voice for Peace Baltimore, but speaking today for myself. I grew up in Pikesville, deeply involved in my synagogue and in the Jewish community. I participated in a youth program in Israel and was told one side of one story about the history of Palestine and Israel. In high school, I might have been signed up to testify in opposition to this bill. Today, I know that HB 1382 would overturn an unconstitutional executive order issued by Larry Hogan that restricts Marylanders' right to boycott, which is politically protected free speech. Now, this may come as a surprise, but the Jewish community is both deeply divided and deeply emotional about Israel-Palestine. Legacy right-wing institutions like AIPAC and the ADL repeat the lie that all criticism or protest against the fascist, Jewish supremacist ethno-state is inherently anti-Semitic. This is false. In fact, it is deeply aligned with Judaism and Jewish values to take action against despots and autocrats and to oppose suppressive apartheid regimes. The Israeli human rights organization B'Tselem reported yesterday that Israel has killed 16 people in Gaza since Israel and the Trump regime started the war on Iran, and 648 people in Gaza since the so-called ceasefire was declared. My Jewish faith compels me to boycott Israel, which continues to commit genocide on the Palestinian people. I urge you to report favorable on HB 1382 so that Maryland does not discriminate against anyone whose values, politics, or faith moves them to boycott Israel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Monfred. Mr. Grady O'Rear next.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I also urge favorable report on HB 1382, and I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Palestine Legislative Action Network, a collection of different advocacy organizations who are in favor of a favorable report on this bill. This bill protects a basic constitutional principle, as we've heard, and forces political loyalty test, and it needs to end. The bill's own preamble recognizes concerns about freedom of speech and constitutionally protected political expression. It's not enough to hear privately that Governor Moore may not be enforcing this executive order, which is what I've heard. If a policy chills speech, intimidates contractors, and remains on the books, the damage is still real. A right that depends on quiet non-enforcement is not secure. Marylanders should not have to guess whether they may speak, advocate, boycott, or dissent without risking their livelihoods. Governor Hogan himself rescinded scores of earlier executive orders. However, this one has not been rescinded by our current governor. It confirms an obvious point. Executive orders, the fact that Governor Hogan rescinded them anyway, are not sacred. They can and should be undone when they conflict with constitutional values. We should also be honest about the larger issue. Violent problem solving must always be open to public criticism. Gag rules are unacceptable. When I was a boy, prominent Americans such as Paul Robeson, W.E. Du Bois, Arthur Miller, and many others were punished for their political views during the McCarthy era. That period is now remembered as a warning, not a model. We should not repeat its mistakes in Maryland procurement policy. HB 1382 restores freedom of conscience, protects peaceful advocacy, and removes an unconstitutional chill on speech. I respectfully ask for a favorable report. Thank you for consideration.
Thank you very much. Ms. Joanna Silver.
Thank you. My name is Joanna Silver, and I am testifying on behalf of the Montgomery County Jewish Collective, an organization of Jewish identifying residents of Montgomery County committed to collective liberation as the cornerstone of a vibrant, safe, and supportive Jewish community and a safe and equitable county and state for all. It is contrary to our most fundamental freedoms for the state to limit political speech through economic coercion. While this bill prohibits the state from conditioning contracts on a promise not to boycott any nation, it is necessary now because our governor has refused to withdraw an executive order that specifically prevents state contractors from participating in boycotts of Israel. Our members are Jews from Montgomery County who hold views that are critical of the state of Israel because of its historical and present subjugation of and violence towards Palestinians. These critical voices now reflect a majority among American Jews. Here in Maryland, over 600 Jews recently signed a letter defending Senator Chris Van Hollen's right to criticize Israel. Using boycotts as an ethical and peaceful tool to effect political change in governments with which you disagree is part of a well-established and effective tradition. Many of our members choose to boycott Israel individually through our own purchasing choices in accordance with our own Jewish values as well as our concerns for Jewish safety, both in Israel and around the world. It is unacceptable for our state to weaponize the money our tax dollars provide to prevent private businesses from acting in accord with their own values through peaceful boycotts of any foreign nation. We urge you to issue a positive report on HB 1382. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Silver. Mr. Lawrence Grand Prix.
Good afternoon, Lawrence Grand Prix speaking on behalf of leaders of Beautiful Struggle. We support 1382 because it's clear that the state of Maryland should not legislate whether private citizens' political stances determine their ability to make a living. Just look at the polling on the issue. A University of Maryland poll found that a majority of Republicans, 52%, and 82% of Democrats are against laws penalizing the boycotting of Israel. Regardless of what folks think about supporting or boycotting Israel, they do not support the state penalizing people who choose to do so. It doesn't matter if you pull the contract. The reality is that you're chilling speech, and I believe specifically chilling Black speech. There's a long history of solidarity between the Black community and the Palestinian community, and Black businesses are uniquely susceptible to this ban. So, for example, Stokely Carmichael, who changed his name to Kwame Ture, associated with SNCC, was formerly a supporter of Israel, but became a critic of the state. He also popularized the term Black Power, which helped birth things like the minority contracting movement. So you have One of the folks who literally helped birth the idea of using government contracts as a way to empower Black business would be denied a government contract for his critique of Israel. Similarly, look at someone like Perrin Mitchell with his work around minority set-asides. He was also pro-human rights and anti-war. These are people whose names many Black lawmakers and many lawmakers in Maryland hold up with great veneration, who would risk being impacted by this bill. Also, look at the Black Power movement's desire to use the Black vote to get access to public resources, meaning that Black businesses are uniquely susceptible to the possibility of losing business. So you have this concept of not monopoly, but monopsony, and monopoly on demand. If you own a business that, for example, works with youth, to not get a contract from the school system is likely a death sentence. And Black businesses, because of the Black Power movement, have uniquely relied on state contracting for their survival. This is not a liability. This is not something you should wait for the courts to do. This is an opportunity for lawmakers to operate their right and show the democratic will of the people, to show folks that unlike Trump and the Republicans, we can actually stand on human rights and be able to deliver for our people. So I urge a favorable review. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grand Prix. Thank you to all of our virtual witnesses this afternoon. Seeing if we have any questions from the committee. Seeing as there are no further questions from the committee, thank you for all the testimony and the bill sponsor. This concludes the bill hearing for HB 1382. Thank you very much, everyone. No questions at this time. Thank you very much. And with that, are there any announcements from our subcommittee chairs? Delegate Lehman.
The local government subcommittee will meet in 10 minutes by Zoom. We have 2 bills to consider. It should go pretty quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There is, I know, Delegate Fair, or you do Delegate Tomlinson.
Yeah, so you said you're meeting in 10 minutes?
10 minutes.
Okay, so we're gonna meet in 25 minutes then. So what? Sorry, the election subcommittee.
Thank you very much.
Election law subcommittee will meet in 25 minutes.
All right, sounds good. Thank you all. That adjourns our bill hearings for today.